All right, it's 6:30, so we're gonna, I almost said adjourn. So we're gonna start this board meeting, the Nampa School District Trustees. And the first on the agenda is, as always, we begin with a Pledge of Allegiance. So if you would please stand. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for attending, and those online that are watching. We have Trustee Simpson will be with us shortly, but she will be here. So when we get to action items, she is on her way, I believe. But we are going to go into our next item, which is our mission and vision statements. You got those ready? Got them memorized yet? Neither do I. So right here at the top there. So we'll just start. The mission of the
Nampa School District is to ensure high levels of achievement for every student.
Vision statement is
every student is fully engaged in extraordinary learning experiences, preparing for successful transition to the next stage of life.
Okay, next item is approval of agenda. We have approval. Do we have a motion? I'll entertain a motion for approval, or if we need to make any changes to the agenda.
I motion to approve the agenda. I second.
Okay, it's been motioned and seconded. Any discussion on that motion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we understand. Next, we have from West Middle School, the ASL Club for our student spotlight. This is the best part of the meeting.
Come on. You've actually mashed the button properly. There it is.
Thank you. Trustees, Dr. Russell. I'm Chance Whitmore, principal at West. We had the opportunity this year to take on a new program at my school, the district DHH program. And this club flowed naturally out of this. So I'd like to introduce Kristen Stubblefield to talk a little bit about this club.
Good evening. I'm Kristen Stubblefield. I'm one of the consulting teachers for the Nampa School District for Special Education. So my past experiences, I was an interpreter for 15 years, originally before I got involved in teaching and special education. So when this opportunity came our way, we have 2 deaf students, one that will be coming from West Data next year, a little 6th grader, one moving on to Nampa High, where they will she will continue her education in the Nampa School District. So our vision was to create a club. So we didn't want little singleton deaf individuals to be without signing and to have a community that supported them. So we started an ASL club. Our 2 interpreters helped put that together as well. Stevie Porter is one of our interpreters. And this little one has been my faithful hearing student who has attended the ASL club. We started with like 60, we're down to a few, but they're able to really connect with our deaf students and be able to have a community. So it's not the deaf students over here and the hearing students over there. So West is beginning to understand deaf culture. They're beginning to understand sign language. And so we're starting to build that bridge between hearing and deaf.
Very good.
Anyway, and this is Lauren Fletcher saying, yeah, we love Nampa. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any questions?
Thank you.
Well, Mr. Whitmore sits all the way down.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is community information. So we invited the St. Luke's mobile bus to come and do a presentation or just some information, community information about what it is that bus provides, the services they provide, and maybe just a little bit of history and background and the services that are provided. I had an opportunity to tour that bus, and I learned a lot. there was a lot of stuff that I didn't know about that bus, but I'm glad I went, and I was actually able to go with Dr. Russell and tour that bus and ask a lot of questions and get a lot of things explained to me. So do we have someone here from St. Luke's? No? Did they not? I thought they were going.
Chair Kirkman, I don't believe they were able to make it this evening.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll move on to the next agenda item then. The update from Nampa Education Association is this copy here. Yeah, I thought I saw him sneak in the back door there.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for giving us this opportunity to address you at the meetings. I'll try and be as brief as I can. I know I sent my comments so early. Hopefully you got those ahead of time. And of course, I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have. First, I just want to give a shout out to the community for passing the levy. Fantastic news. And to whatever extent, your political supporters, showed up to continue that support, it's fantastic and it's much appreciated. I know that people don't necessarily understand how all those dollars work, but I learned that a good number of positions at all the levels, admin, classified, or certificated, rely on that levy just to be funded. That was sort of eye-opening. So supplemental is not extra. So thank you for the community for that support. The master contract for the 21-22 year, my belief and understanding is that at least one of our reopening clauses was triggered, which means that that contract is reopened. I don't know if we need a declaration or something. There was a general acknowledgement at the last negotiation session that it's been reopened. And so I just wanted to really speak to that, I guess, to share my perspective, our perspective as to what that means. There's no obligation to spend any of those additional dollars in any specific way. The only obligation is to negotiate in good faith about those dollars. There are no other issues other than the money that would be reopened. So the master contract, as it is in terms of work, the issues, other issues remains the same. So it's really just addressing the additional funding that has come through as a result of the unexpected carryover and the additional FTE. And then my real point is I want to just stress the importance of the reopeners from my perspective. The district really is in a position of having to budget conservatively because you don't know what the future holds, but the contracts and the budget has to be set ahead of time. And school funding is, of course, a Byzantine, process, which I definitely didn't understand before I started on the negotiations team, and I'm still learning stuff every year. But what the reopeners do is allow us to really bridge that gap and get a deal done, knowing that if there is additional money that comes, when everything is said and done, when the enrollment numbers are in or the ADA numbers are in, and staffing numbers are in, if we know that we can come back and revisit whatever additional money there is, then that helps us get there and make a deal. So, okay, this is good enough for now. There has to be trust involved in that. So just having your opener by itself isn't necessarily enough. It's actually the trust that when we sit back down again, the negotiations will be in good faith. There will be, real discussion about how to utilize that money. And it definitely seems like things are looking good. This is a good team this year. I think we're well suited to discuss these issues in good faith and hopefully, distribute or disperse the money wisely and appropriately. The view on the 22 legislative session. So last year, Trustee Westfall asked me, one of the things that I could do perhaps with this time is to just give the teacher's perspective on legislative decisions that are being made. And so the legislature is still in session. Obviously, I'm sure you're paying attention to many of those issues. So the view from the trenches, if you will, the one thing that really had kind of stuck out to me so far is to whatever extent the larger culture war is going to be played out in schools, that to me, it strikes me that there are going to be casualties in that war. Right now, the battles are being waged, at the state legislature or in the media, and it's really you all. You are the ones that have that power to determine to what extent the casualties are students and staff, I should say, or staff, in the sense of there can be vitriol and rhetoric happening, down the road, or in the larger, media, or larger world, social media, for instance. But you have the power to implement policies or not implement those policies. And it's a heavy and a heady responsibility that really just struck me, because just because the legislator says something doesn't mean that you will actually have to implement that. In particular, the whole issue of criminalizing librarians stuck out to me as a potential nasty issue that would ultimately fall to you to implement, that kind of policy. So the way that it's received is really scary. It's scary to read the news. It's scary to watch the legislature. It's scary to see these battles being played out. But I just want to encourage you to understand that you could insulate the students and the staff of NAMPA by exerting that local control and having this still be the community that it is, which is not a monolith. There is a lot of diversity of political views and of other types of diversity. But I do feel like there is this kind of consensus about NAMPA in terms of how things are responded to, even responses to things like the pandemic. There was a particular culture in NAMPA that was different from other places. And so, the staff are looking to you to insulate us from that. The last thing about the legislature was there was some reporting from, or some information from Mr. Dewey at the negotiation session that so far things look good. So JFAC has approved the budget that's still being discussed, by the actual chambers. And if it passes, which is a big if, then there might be some additional money, more than in recent years. But I do just want to comment that the recent gains over the past couple of years, and Trustee Simpson, of course, has been on the negotiations team and has been dealing with these issues firsthand. Most of those gains have gone to the minimums. So there were new minimum salaries that were created by the legislature. And that really sucked up a lot of, I should say soaked up, maybe it's a better word, soaked up a lot of the money that was provided. And in general, that's a good thing. I'm not opposed to, to a higher starting salaries in terms of attracting people. But the retention is the other side. And I just want to make it clear that because the new salaries and the minimums have been soaking up the funds, the gains have really not been experienced by experienced educators. So people on our top end of the salary ladder have not really experienced kind of increases that the newer people have. The new minimums that are kicking in from the revised career ladder, I think there's some this year and there'll be some in ongoing years. Those have the continuing potential to soak up the additional monies that are coming in. We have kind of a funky salary schedule. It's like a dumbbell shape, kind of on an axis like this. The new minimums will be forcing some money to go into the middle, which again, where does that come from? Well, the new minimums up here, are set by law. And so it's again, those experienced educators that are going to be bearing the brunt of that, in that they won't maybe be seeing the increases that new teachers and that mid-level teachers would be experiencing with the way that the funding system works. The advanced placement even is a fascinating kind of wrinkle, because the top end of the NAMPA salary scale is already higher than that. And my understanding is that many legislators have the misconception that additional money is actually going right as it passed through to teachers. And that's not the case. That's simply a funding mechanism. If many educators were to get that passed through in NAMPA, they would be making less because they're already making more than that. So this is just really money from the state to the district. And so it's not necessarily helping the district, to make ends meet, if you will, or really to increase the salaries of experienced teachers. And from my experience, I'm in my 6th year of teaching now, and I can tell you there just is no substitute for experience. It takes a while to really figure out what you're doing. You might be great with kids, you might be great at your subject matter, but to put it all together just takes time. And so to the extent that we are at risk of potentially losing experienced educators, that is a real risk and danger to the students, because when you lose that experience, you're losing real value. And so there are complicated issues, that are coming ahead. I'm eager and excited about our current negotiations team look forward to the progress that we'll make in earnest now that the legislature hopefully is going to be wrapping this up.
Thank you. Before you sit down, just a quick clarification in 30 seconds or less, bullet point. What are some of the culture war items that you see coming from the group that you represent?
So I think so two things maybe stood out so far. So one was some laws passed last year about transgender, particularly transgender athletes. I do think that the transgender issues are kind of the new battlefront. And to me, it's.
What are some other? Are there any other ones that?
Sure. So SEL, the idea that social emotional learning is somehow secret CRT is a pernicious lie, quite frankly, a distortion. So that's a big one.
Any others?
And then I would say the issue of book banning. So the idea that people are coming for the books, the so-called smut, that is a real affront, I would say, to people. Who our job is to increase thoughtfulness, to increase thinking, to increase exposure to ideas. That's what we get paid to do.
Okay. Any others?
I think those are the biggest ones.
All right. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Any questions, comments? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Coffey. Appreciate it. Okay. Next item on the agenda is trustee update. Any updates from the trustees?
So since our last meeting, I was able to visit 2 more schools. I was able to hit Roosevelt as well as Endeavor. Both visits were phenomenal. I got to, Ryan and I actually had a date day at Endeavor. If that tells you how busy we've been, he went with me and decided our nephew would go there. Like, I was like, oh, you've only been to one. So great. I loved it. It was great to really see the different things that again, each of the schools have going on, and just really good for understanding. I really love my time there, and I think it's eye-opening.
Anyone else? I was able to visit, I think, since the last meeting. We've had more special meetings than we've had regular meetings, so I can't remember.
Right.
But I think I was able to visit West Middle School, and Mr. Whitmore took me kind of on a tour of West, and it was really cool to see the red. First of all, it's my favorite color, so I love the red in that school. And got to meet with some teachers and really kind of see what they were doing. I also visited South Middle School and was impressed at what they're doing there, and saw blue, and I love blue too, so I love that school too. But it was really cool to get out and to talk to teachers. I also had an opportunity to go and walk around Columbia. I've been to that school many times, but I was in areas of that school that I'd never been in. Mr. Wilson took me to the catwalk above the stage there, and so it was kind of interesting to see aspects of that school that I have never seen before. And then Endeavor, I was at Endeavor also, I think right after Trustee Taylor was there, and I got there when they were doing an assembly, which was really kind of cool. That rocket dance, rocket rally, yeah. And they had brought that back, and the teachers just. What struck me was the energy that the teachers have with all those kids. And I sat up in a little corner, hoping nobody would notice me there, and just watched those kids and their excitement and their energy. And the teachers were they met them all the way with the energy. And that's what really touches my heart. And I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday, and he was asking me how things are going. And I said, what really gets me grounded in this position is when you get out into the schools. And you really see what the teachers are going through and what they're doing, and the kids with their smiles, and you can see their faces. I mean, that's really what keeps me grounded in this position. And a shout out to Miss Yarbrough, the principal there at Endeavor. She's just as energetic as those kids and those teachers are. And I told her, I says, it seems like your hardest job is just keeping up with your staff. So it's really good to get out there in those schools and see what's going on at ground level. So appreciate everyone getting out there and visiting the
Can I
schools.
ask just?
Sure.
I was also able to attend the art showcase at Centennial.
Oh, yeah.
And I only want to bring that up because it was fantastic. Not only could you see everything that they're learning through art from math to science, but we had an actual artist working in the building doing the mural. The kids were involved. That was super cool. And then the previous principal performed a song as well, and all the kids were so excited to have him. Like, it was just such a great event. I got there only even the last hour, and it was still that like vivacious. It was really great to see. Super welcoming, lots of pizza, lots of fun, a ton of performance by the kids. A lot of Shel Silverstein, which is all I ever read my kids, so I was like so excited. But it was a really great event too, and I was so glad that I got to attend that. So, and I just wanted to approve it.
Yeah, that was awesome. Good. All right, if there's nothing else, we'll move on to the next agenda, which is public comment. So again, I'm gonna divide this public comment section out. So right now, if there is anybody who would like to comment on anything not on the agenda, not specifically on the agenda, this is the time for that. If you want to comment on something on a specific item on the agenda, then we'll get to those public comments at that item, okay? So at this point, I don't have anybody signed up for a non-agenda item public comment, but is there anyone that would like to speak on anything that's not on the agenda? Now's your chance. Or forever hold your peace until next month. Okay? That being said, we will move on to the next item, which is the consent agenda.
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
I second.
Okay, it's been motioned and seconded for approval of the consent agenda. Any comment or any discussion on that motion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the motion is passed. We are moving on to the new business, which is the first item under new business is Nampa High School gym flooring and bleacher replacement.
Yes. That one's mine.
Yep.
Is this thing on? Hopefully it is, or it's not. I don't know. It's not doing this thing. We'll just talk loud because it's that day, and we'll just roll with the technology weirdness here. So what we've been doing is we've with the previous supplemental levy, we've allocated some funds to repair and update the Napa High gym floor. At the same time, we're going to do the lower bleachers. We've worked with Design West to do that as part of our process, and they've been able to go through and make sure it's going to be properly designed and installed, and with all the logistics, especially dealing with an older facility. There are all kinds of surprises and stuff that could pop up that hopefully they've helped us identify ahead of time to make that there. But we do have Mr. Vondenkamp here with us, the architect and design list, and Mr. Hildebrand from maintenance here to answer any of your questions that you do have about this.
This, you're just talking about the floor or floor and bleacher, right?
Floor and bleacher, they are together.
Floor and bleachers. It's pretty straightforward.
I try.
Okay. Well, I feel bad that they showed up with no questions, so. That's okay. But appreciate you guys being here. Okay, well, if there's no other questions or comments, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve the Nampa High School gym flooring and bleacher replacement base bid alternate number 1 and bid alternate number 2.
I second.
Okay, it's been motioned and seconded. Any discussion on that motion?
Yeah, I think pretty straightforward and excited that our community has supported us keeping our maintenance on our buildings and keeping that ball rolling so they can look nice.
Thank you. It works now.
No, it works. You don't have to start over. Okay, good. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that motion carries. Thank you. Next item is student calendar.
Chair Kirkman and trustees, just would like to present to you the calendar for the 22-23 for school year to give you a nice opportunity to possibly approve tonight. The way this works is we hold a calendar committee that starts working on this about 3 or 4 months ago. They started. There's a variety of folks that are on that committee. That includes teachers from every level, administrators from all the levels, our special ed director, someone from HR, and then a parent. And we gather input through a variety of ways, through a survey with our staff and then through holding focus groups with several groups of parents. I think there were about 17 parents that gave some input with that. So I'm just going to do a couple of highlights on the calendar and then allow you guys to maybe ask questions. So this calendar is really geared towards minimizing short weeks. We had a couple of short weeks in our calendar this year around Thanksgiving, for a good example. Those are really hard for schools. Typically, they're low attendance. They're not as the best instructional days as well. And so if you're got some feedback, this we'd like to, from both staff and parents, to minimize those. And so this calendar does that. It provides some work days after teachers do their grading towards the end of the quarters and semesters. It's really nice to have, actually quarters, it's really nice to have some time for teachers to have an ability to put in grades and have some of that. Thanksgiving is a full week this year, and both of those calendars. Again, some feedback from parents was on that one. The other really important one is the seat time. There is a law that requires our high schools to have a certain amount of seat time to earn credits. In the last couple of years, we have been out of balance, meaning we have had less hours in the fall and more hours in the spring. And we worked hard on this committee to balance that out. And so you'll see there is very little difference between fall and spring. So we do not believe we'll need to do a waiver with some adjustments we'll need to do. But there might be a waiver for our seniors. Our seniors do get out of school in the spring semester a few weeks early, so it's possible we would need to do that. Other than that, it does balance it out well and meets that goal. Just a couple of the big differences. As I mentioned, the Tdla weeks are gone. Our parent-teacher conferences in the spring, we usually do a targeted conferences during that time. Feedback from teachers and parents was the schools are doing a good job of communicating with parents around academic concerns prior to that, and so that was taken off to provide a little bit more instructional time in the spring. I believe Mr. LeBou is here. He helped chair the committee, and he can help answer some questions if there is others. I see that our director, Cindy Cook from Special Ed, is here as well. So open that up to questions.
Questions?
I do. The biggest question I've had, and I've had some emails from teachers and parents regarding your spring break that you have set up in March. And what I'm hearing is a problem is some of the schools have it set up the last week of March and some of them haven't set up the third week of March. And what happens is you have parents and families who have kids in 2 different schools, but they're having different weeks off, so it makes it difficult for the parents because they've got kids off at different weeks. And I don't understand why we can't make that. Honestly, in my day, we used to have Easter vacation during Easter. I mean, it seems like that would fix the problem.
So, because I had some of those same concerns brought to my attention, but it's not necessarily different schools, it's different districts. Yeah, so teacher works in an Nampa school district, kids go to a Valley View school district, and that's the incongruence.
Yeah, so typically, trustee chairman and trustee Pearson, every year we try to look at other districts. So we usually try to find out what Boise's doing, what Valley is doing, what CUNA, what Middleton, and we do try our best to get on the same dates because it can be confusing. I don't know if Mr. LeBou would be able to speak to how the committee addressed that concern. Will you share that with us, please?
Yeah, thank you, trustees and Dr. Russell. Spring break, it's been our norm in Nampa School District that it is always the last week of March. And so historically that tends to be when it falls. This year we've looked at that, and there are universities and surrounding districts that are on both sides of that. Some fall the same week we do and some do not. And as we put that out and garnered or asked those questions, that the overwhelming majority fell the last week. And I shouldn't say it was overwhelming, but the majority clearly fell the last week. We know that it's going to conflict with a handful of other districts, but if we had moved it to the week earlier, it would conflict similarly. So
I'm going to ask again, why can't you keep them the same, or why aren't we doing it around Easter? Because traditionally, that's, you know, when families get together is around that religious holiday.
So once again, it's been our practice that spring break is the last full week of March, and that was included in the charge that was provided by the superintendent. So that has been our practice and the congruence to past practice and common calendars.
Trustee Pearson, we have tried our best to match the other districts around us. As you're aware, Easter depends upon how many weeks after some of those religious holidays. And so it does vary upon that. And I think we've just tried to be consistent throughout the years to match other districts as close as we can. And I believe that's why the calendar committee asked to have that in the last week of March. It also has to do with our quarters and how we're trying to end quarters at certain times. So there is some instructional things around that as well.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to ask, because it looks like the third quarter ends on the 24th. The next week is spring break, according to this calendar. Moving spring break a week earlier, what kind of a disruption would that be to the end of the quarter?
It's just an adjustment. I mean, it's an adjustment that could be made. But once again, if we choose to do that, it'll break the norm, and there'll be an equal number of people disappointed that we moved it the other direction. So once again, we went with our traditional approach, and also based on the feedback that we got from parents and staff as well. And the preference was the final week of March.
Did you get much response in the surveys that you sent out to parents?
We did get some response, yeah, and it was very helpful. We invited a group of parents to come in and talk as well, and the parents that came in helped us to shape some of the things. There are parameters within the calendar that make it, that limit the number of options we really have. Graduation being one of them. Graduation is the last week of May, the 22nd through the 26th, and we had talked about a later start and maybe going into the first full week of June, but that would have created a greater discrepancy on seat time for our seniors.
You probably would have heard from my wife too, later in June.
Yeah.
Chair Kirkman, I believe the survey was for staff, and the parent input came from the focus groups.
The focus group parent feedback, yeah, from the focus group.
Any other questions?
So I mean, I heard past practice, so this year it is not though.
Right.
It's the week earlier.
Correct.
So my guess is that there was staff suggestion and pushback that said, keep it that last week, or has that just been always? I guess I'm just wondering if people were like, this doesn't work, or was it just?
So once again, the charge has been to do a 2-year calendar, and so the last calendar would have been done much earlier, and it can go both ways. And in our attempt to respond to local area, other school districts, it's kind of, and some change as well. So not everyone has their calendars posted yet. For instance, Nampa does not.
Yeah.
So.
Chair Kirkman and trustees, one thing that we could do, if there is a desire to have time around Easter or something like that, we could, as the committee meets for future, to look at how to provide a comp day or something along those times, and consider that as well. Try to work through that in the future.
What is the time frame that we normally have this calendar approved? Is it now? Is this normally when you would bring it, and this is the deadline to it? And
It is. Parents are anxious. A number of people have vacation plans that they probably wish we had it, several months ago. But yeah, this is the typical time for calendar approval.
I know I went to our surrounding districts to try to find, and a lot of them don't have their calendar for next year even up, because they're probably voting on it. Well, they're probably voting on it this month as well, or possibly next month. Yeah.
Can I correct my permission to speak?
Sure.
And interim superintendent Russell, correct me if I'm wrong. I believe the calendars have to be submitted to the State Department of Education in May. So they have to be approved prior to that. And I don't know the exact date in May, but it's usually towards, like, let's just say the 15th of May. It has to be submitted to them. So the time frame would be between
That's
now
pretty
and
close, yeah.
an April meeting.
And Chair Kirkman, just one other piece to consider too around the spring break. As you'll see in our consent agenda, there was a great deal of travel just around that. Many other school districts around the states tend to have activities around similar to last week of March. And so, we have some traveling athletic teams that go and compete in Utah. There's some activities down there as well. A lot of the schools in the Utah, Idaho area tend to have similar spring break time, so that could affect some of those travels if traditionally we've sent students to do some extracurriculars.
So what you're saying is having this later week for spring break would accommodate some of those that might come up in the next 2 years?
Trustee Kirkman, I believe that could be accurate.
Any other thoughts, comments, questions?
Permission just to speak through, thank you. The only
Sure.
emails that we received really were asking us to really reconsider the calendar. And I just don't feel like I've had enough time with it. I did do what you were asking, but I don't have a ton of background with those changes. Not saying that anything that we're doing is incorrect, but if we could have, again, more time for more input, which I love because we're bringing attention to it now, that's always gonna be the way that I want to lean, especially when we receive only feedback and asking us to reconsider things about the calendar, which was all that we received from both staff and parents, which again, it's not a ton, but I always like bringing light and then getting a little bit more time when it put it into the community's mind. And then now knowing parents weren't surveyed, I really enjoy getting that input, especially when we're making a 2-year decision.
Agree.
Ms. Lamont, how long typically do you know, or Dr. Russell, does it take for the state board to approve the calendar? Any idea?
You mean for you to submit yours to them?
To submit it and for that to be approved?
They usually do it. They just want to make sure that you're meeting the required hours.
It's the seat time. and
Yeah,
whatnot.
so usually as soon as you get it in May, they are fine with it. If they come back to you and email saying, hey, we've noticed that you are short 8 hours or 4 hours in this, they would let you bring it back to the table and resubmit it. It kind of changes their own time frame when they submit. I don't believe that's ever happened here in Nampa, but they do work with you once you've already submitted. You just have to meet that initial time frame.
Okay, so just a thought, if this were to go to April's meeting, we could still meet that deadline as far as State Board of Education. Okay.
Chair Kirkman, I believe we could get a survey out to parents if trustees would like us to do that and get some more input and bring it back in April.
Personally, I think that would be great. I think it would be, because I remember always getting the calendar going, what the heck? How come it said this date and then you have to change plans and things like that? So any other questions for Mr. Lee? Thank you.
Okay.
So with this item, I don't have anybody signed up as far as public comment for this item, but I do want to open it up. If there's anybody in the audience that would like to comment on this particular agenda item, now is your chance. But it also sounds like we might, I'm not sure what the board will do, but it also sounds like we might be soliciting some additional response also. So here's the opportunity. Anybody in this audience would like to comment on this particular, come to the lectern, state your name.
And sign in, please.
And I think she has a sign-in sheet there, but so we got the public record. And you have 3 minutes, starting 2 minutes ago.
Is it working? Yes, it is.
Yes, it
Okay.
is.
So my main thing is,
Just state your
my
name.
name's Amy Barbieri. And my main concern is my kids every year since kindergarten have always been absent the day after Easter. And so if we were to do a comp day even, not even just the week of Easter being off, I get there's that spring break during spring break, because that's the first day of spring during that week typically. I think that's fine. But if we could have a comp day on Monday, that would be great, because my kids are always absent. And you know, being absent can be an issue, and especially in high school, I know missed days and stuff really matters. But we do have family that comes into town, and so I know a lot of people do, and that's always been a problem. So if you could take that into consideration, that would be wonderful.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Come on up. Oh, sorry. I'll get you right up.
Sorry. Just a real quick
That's
comment.
all right. Just state your name.
Veronica Maple.
I can do that while I'm talking. My name is Veronica Maple. I am a teacher here in the Nampa School District, and I was also part of the committee that brought up the calendar. And just to clarify some things that if you take that comp day, that's going to add a day to the calendar. So you also have to consider that aspect, that whatever days we take off, we still have to make them up. The other thing is that for spring break, it's literally practically the middle of the semester, and it's that nice mental break that the kids need and all the staff need in order to ensure that they can make it through April and May without too much conflict. And honestly, having been on the calendar committee now for 5 years, it's so hard to meet everybody's needs. And we are constantly struggling every year, because we do have to meet, even when we do it for 2 years, we go back again the very next year in order to get started on the next calendar, to meet everyone's needs. And I realize you're so concerned, and I appreciate that. Just please understand that it will be impossible to meet everyone's needs on this. There will be folks that will be frustrated and probably unhappy about the schedule. Unfortunately, there's too many, not too many, but there's just so many thoughts and opinions and families that do different plans, teachers, students. It is difficult. And I appreciate your efforts in trying to get as many point of views as you can. And also the last couple of years, when you consider when we've had holidays, the days everything falls on, trying to get seat time, those are difficult things to maneuver. And like I said, for the past 5 years, having been on that, I've learned a great deal of what it takes to make it try to work as best we can. So please consider that. And I know you're going to try to do the right thing. Thank you.
And your efforts on that committee are appreciated.
Thank you.
Very much so.
Hi, Mandy, or Trustee Simpson, since you are a teacher in this district, can you confirm that the ISATs are in April, all month long? How would that have any significance on the calendar change? Would that,
I mean, I know the interim superintendent can comment as well, but it would have an impact on those testing dates, because it's a window that's set. We don't control the windows of those testing windows. And so that, I don't know all the specific dates. I just know, the high school math, but I do believe it would have a big impact on that and getting the number of students tested that we need tested on time.
right, so if we were to take a day off in April, there could be a potential impact on ISATs. Okay, that's all I had to say.
Could you say your name, please?
Bessie Ely.
All right, thank you.
Sorry, and I do feel like I spoke out of turn on that. Oh, I apologize. I know this is public comment and I shouldn't have done that. I apologize. Sorry.
Appreciate the
everyone.
comments. Is there anyone else like to comment on this particular agenda topic? And since it did come up, Dr. Russell, do you have any idea on those ISAT tests?
Chairman.
Put you on the spot.
Yeah, no, there is a window that is given. It typically starts in mid to late March and it runs into the 1st of May. So a day or two, it could affect a schedule. Having a spring break late would definitely affect a schedule. A day or two, it's probably not ideal, but it could be done. And just to lighten, there are 4 major areas for the calendar committee that kind of deal with, kind of box us in, if you will. One is the start of school, and so not starting school too early, typically 3rd week. Christmas as it falls on the calendar. Our graduation time given to us by the Idaho Center is another huge one. And then our seat time hours. And so that's what really the calendar committee gets boxed in a lot within those dates. And then there's only so much you can do with working in it. So just to Ms. Maple's comments over there.
Very good, thank you.
I just pulled it up again, looking at it, because it's, typically something that gets forgotten. I mean, if you look at the rest of the calendar and kind of the little breaks that fall throughout, and if that got pushed up, one of the hard things for your kids and for your staff is really like the lack of breaks in April, May. So you push that up a week, then you add 1 more week, and then there's only April 28th, and then Memorial Day at the end to kind of give folks a break. Yeah, and I didn't really think about the ISATs, but that break right before starting to ISAT test, I think is helpful for kids to reset and regroup and before they come back in and test. And that's just me personally.
And you're saying
thinking
it
out
would be
on those things.
helpful, it would be helpful for those kids leaving the spring break where it is now on the calendar.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments or questions from the trustees? Okay. What do y'all want to do?
I would still like to wait to vote till April, so maybe we can get some more input.
I'm gonna second that. What I love about all of this, and I realized that wasn't a motion, but I do. But this is always very enlightening, and I do think that time is not always our friend in the way that we get these types of motions or this information. And even if the calendar were to stay the same, I do believe that this is something that deserves due diligence. And again, we only get it so many days, just like the rest of the community, as far as like what exactly is going to be on the agenda or the information that we get. I just think that this could use a little bit more due diligence, not saying that there would be a change either way. I just like the idea of a little bit more time just to make sure that I like to do an extreme amount of due diligence. And Chair, we did have a hand raised over there. So I wasn't sure if somebody.
All right, we'll let you come up and make a comment
Hi, please sign in.
and state your name.
Okay. Okay. My name is Kelsey Para. I'm a teacher and a parent in the school district. I also was on the calendar committee. To use your words, we have given this due diligence. We have put out surveys. We have asked parents. We have considered what you have considered. This is the best option. So I would appreciate, due to time, that this be passed. I feel like it's disrespectful to say that we don't give due diligence to these things. We do. We take these things very seriously, and we took time out of our day to do this. I'm sorry, but I feel disrespected, and so do a lot of teachers. I'm a parent in the school district as well, and I know that the teachers and the staff and the district staff work hard to take care of our children, and they work hard to make sure that this benefits as many people as we possibly can. It's not going to benefit everyone, period. So I don't know what else to say about that, but this is a disgrace. Thank you.
And thank you for your comments. Any other comments or questions from the trustees? I'll entertain a motion.
I move that we approve the calendar recommendation for the 2022-23 and 23-24 school year.
I'll second that.
Can I speak to it?
Absolutely.
I think, I was about to say the same thing. This is a committee, this is part of the process and has been, and the calendar committee works extremely hard to meet it. I kind of was flipping back through to look at how many comments I did get, and I've been on the board when we've gotten a slew of like, hey, what's going on with this on the calendar? So I feel like the 3 emails I got doesn't warrant wait. I could be wrong, and I'm willing to admit that if that's the case. I also, so in that, I just think it's not due until May, and so to the state, if people decide and look at it and weren't paying attention and didn't feel like their voices were heard, they can always let us know, and then we can add it to the agenda for April. But it is tough to make everybody happy, and I get it. And I will say that I work in a different district that has a different spring break, and my kids will be on this calendar, and I mean I will support it. So
I want to echo what you were saying, Trustee Simpson. I think the committee, and this is why we have committees. I think if we take a look at those committees, maybe we can adjust the makeup of those committees, but that's for another time. But I do think there was a lot of work put into this, and no, we're not gonna make everybody happy. It's just the way it is. And I think the work that went into this calendar, which is much appreciated, I think it makes sense logically. I mean, just looking at the spring break after the third quarter, I think that gives everybody, including parents, just a break. Well, no, the kids will be home, right, for spring break, so it's a good break. But it kind of gives everybody that chance after the third quarter, kind of take a breath, relax for a minute, and get ready for the last push to the end of the school year. So I am in support of this calendar. I wish we had a calendar that could make everybody happy and work for everybody, but it's just not a possibility. Comments on the motion? Okay.
Yeah, so I'm referring only to my due diligence, not anybody else's. So I grasp all the work that goes into the calendar community, and I appreciate when somebody stands up and talks about it. I'm really referring to my ability to have time to make sure that I'm making a choice that really is the best choice that we can make, being that we're a new board, being that I've never been on a calendar committee, being that these are new things. That's why I say time is always our friend, because I'm always referring to my time and these types of things that we get to talk about, because we don't get to really deliberate about these things prior. So that's what I'm always referring to when I'm talking about due diligence, not the lack of, or in like either way in this. I grasp that all of these things take time, but I do like to have that time, because we, like so many people in the past few years, right? It's been such a weird few years, and people maybe in November weren't paying attention to this specific thing. And so I do like, especially as we get to move forward with this type of business, giving it that time, especially when we bring light or attention to it. Not saying that we can please everybody. I don't think that that's ever possible, but I really am just speaking of my time to get the due diligence, and the fact that I really think that we're looking at things through new eyes, just so that everybody feels like they had time to sit with it.
So it's been motioned and seconded to approve this calendar for the next 2 years. So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
Okay, motion dies for a tie. So
I would like to re-motion.
you want to re-motion?
Well, I
She'd
really
like
like,
to make another
I'd like to
motion.
make a
Oh,
different.
okay.
I
was gonna say,
very much liked what Mandy said about approving with the ability to reopen if necessary next month. Like, I loved that idea if something bigger comes up. I'm just not quite sure how I would motion that, or what the best practice is, or can we, or.
Well, this item will be moved to the next agenda.
I think I would be
Next.
careful doing it that way, but
That's what I'm asking.
you could do it that way, but I would say, would you recommend not doing that? If possible, I would probably motion to just table it until April.
Table to April meeting, okay.
If you're already in the plan.
And if this is your motion, also think if there's anything else you want to include in that motion, if you want the school district to
Open that survey that,
open the survey, reach out to parents, you can include that in your motion also as a suggestion.
It's a suggestion. So I move to table this until our April meeting with just a suggestion that we do a full parent survey if one hasn't been done. And that's it.
Sorry, I think that was my suggestion that you had that, not that you needed to make that suggestion for the school district to do that. So you can make a motion to have the school district do that. Or, sorry, I want to clarify that. That was just my opinion.
I'd like to motion that we table this until our April meeting, giving an opportunity for a parent survey to go out.
Okay, it's been motion. Any
I
second?
second.
It's been motion and second to table this agenda item with some additional information to go out to parents for feedback on this calendar. All in favor?
Aye.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me
Can I just
Let me
speak to,
do-
yeah, sorry.
because I did miss that. Is there any
Yeah.
discussion on that motion, Trustee Simpson?
Did you want to speak to it?
No,
Sorry.
I feel like I did a lot.
Okay. I just want to speak to how I'm going to vote, so people aren't trying to read my mind. I am going to vote in favor of this motion. I support it mainly because if it doesn't go through, it dies again, and then it ends up in April as well. And I do feel like what we heard was that possibly the survey would provide the input that folks need to be prepared and ready. So I just want to let people know that I will be voting in support of this motion.
Agreed. Okay, so all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. It's tabled to the next board meeting, regular board meeting. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the Treasure Valley Leadership Academy. Interim Superintendent, I believe this is yours. All right.
Chair Kirkman, trustees, this evening I have Mr. LeBou is going to come up and speak with us about Treasure Valley Leadership Academy. His presentation is going to share with us around the funding of the school and some possible action items that the board may want to consider. So Mr. LeBou.
Thank you, trustees and Dr. Russell. Treasure Valley Leadership Academy was founded under the tenets of being a college readiness and community engagement school. Much of the intention was to create a truly competitive a school around college readiness, and there were high aspirations around enrollment. A little bit of the history around the funding of the school. The funding that provided the seed for it was largely driven by the Albertsons Foundation, $1 million. There was also $105,000 from the new schools. And so the planning began in the 16-17 year. Emmett Wem was principal and did much of the planning. He worked with a number of other folks in that year of planning. The school opened in the 2017 school year with just 9th grade, and then it grew progressively. So they were enrolling freshmen, and each class would roll up, with our first graduating class occurring last year in the 2021 year. This year will be our second graduating class of students at Tdla. One of the things with opening a new school is finding a spot for it. Tdla was in a sub-adequate spot initially, and is currently housed within Park Ridge, now referred to as the Ridge, and includes 6th through 12th grade. So we have a K-5 school and a 6th through 12 program in the same space. And part of that was done to provide a better facility, but also to help us manage costs more responsibly in terms of how leadership, office staff, et cetera, were managed. The enrollment targets initially for the school are shown up here. And so you can see actually in the 2017-18 school year, the intent was to open with both 9th and 10th grade. with targets of 100 students in each of those groups of students. So 200 to start, and you can see that in our current year, we would have a targeted enrollment of 600 total students. Unfortunately, we've fallen well short of that. In the 17-18 school year, you can see we began with 24 students total. The following year, it looks like we maintained most of those students, lost a few going to 10th grade, and then had the biggest class ever with a total of 47 students in 18-19. And then you can see as they matriculate up to our current year, and I did check our enrollment, and enrollment at TBLA is still currently 35 students. It's important for us to be fiscally responsible as stewards, and you as trustees hold the keys of helping us to maintain that fiscal responsibility. TBLA, of course, was funded initially with a large part of grant funding, and this table actually shows what that looks like. $186,000 was spent in that planning year, and that covered salaries for the administrator and also doing some of the work that was stipend work. In the second year, you can see that $450,000 came from grants and then $133,000 from the general fund. As those grant funds were depleted, eventually all of that cost for operating the school needed to transfer to the general fund. You can see that we definitely become more efficient in terms of the dollars spent. And part of that I shared with combining under the same roof. It allowed us to condense or use our nurses and office staff and also our administration. So we saved a little bit of money there, but still, even this current year, $360,000 for instructional staff. This table shows what the FTE ratio for our traditional comprehensive high schools is set at, which is a 25.5 to 1 ratio. You can see, looking at the students divided by the ratio, how much FTE TBLA would have earned each of those years. So in the first year, not quite 1 FTE, but we're allocated 5 instructional staff and a counselor. And you can see how that matriculates across. We've become just slightly more efficient in terms of the staffing. However, TBLA has not earned, using that same 25.5 to 1 ratio, even 2 FTE. So less than a third of the FTE that would have been allocated to a comprehensive school. In considering what options might exist for current TBLA students, depending upon what action the board may or may not take, I wanted to remind you, each of you as trustees, about the options that exist within the district, as well as share a little bit about a parent night that we held last Thursday to talk about this. And we went through this presentation. We had 1 parent come and 1 student that were able to come. Other options for TBLA students, and I guess I should preface this with, for the most part, TBLA students have really been looking for something smaller than our comprehensive high schools. It tends to be the size of the school that makes TBLA so attractive for many of our students. So with that in mind, we also have Union. Union is our big picture school, and the principal there is anxious, willing, looking forward to the opportunity, if you decide to close PBLA, to look at those students and place them, if they're interested, at Union. Union's total enrollment is about 200 students, grades 6 through 12. We also have NOVA, Nampa Online Virtual Academy. It may or may not be a good fit for some of our students, but once again, much smaller. The STEM program at Columbia may be an option for some of those students as well. It creates a school within a school. Of course, our comprehensive high schools would be an option as well as our pathways. And pathways is a board-approved charter within our district. One other thing that I think is important to kind of point out, and I didn't make a slide of this, but just to kind of give you an idea about what this really looks like in terms of dollars, Mr. Dewey actually tracks the cost per student. And so within our comprehensive high schools, the total cost of educating a student is between $7,800 and $8,000. Tdla is approaching $15,000 per student. And it's more than the money. And let me explain to you why it's more than the money. Tdla, in addition to being super funded in terms of the FTE that we give for the students, is also underfunded. They don't have the staff that they need to fully serve those students. What do I mean by that? The number of offerings and their teachers really are unicorns because they have certifications that allow them to teach a broad range of classes, which is really beneficial for the students. However, for teachers, that means that they're teaching 5 or maybe even 6 different subjects. So they're having to prepare multiple courses. And even at that, the graduation requirements are still having some of our Tdla students attend our comprehensives to take some courses and or taking IDLA courses as well to meet graduation requirements. Our recommendation as administration, and there are kind of 3 options that we suggested. You could certainly choose to gather more information and consider at a later date. Another possibility would be to close at the end of this current school year, or another option to consider would be to close Tdla at the end of the 22-23 school year. Our current agreement would have us closing at the end of the 22-23 school year. However, recruitment would be really challenging if that were the decision to be made. We've given Tdla a really good opportunity. Granted, we've had some really negative experiences with the pandemic, but we still have given 5 solid years, and the program just has not grown to a place where it's sustainable. So as a director of secondary instruction, my recommendation would be to consider closing Tdla at the end of this school year.
Okay. I think there's a couple of questions we might have for you.
I'm sure.
Any questions from trustees? I've got it with you down too.
Well, first, I just want a clarification. Unions, you mentioned Union School, Nova, a couple other listings. Are those more of an alternative type school? What kind of students do they have compared to the students at Tdla? Are they similar?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent question, and I think that the type of students that are attracted to each of those programs do so for different reasons. In terms of Nampa Online Virtual Academy, there's still a number of people who really do not feel comfortable being out in public, and so perhaps they have grandparents at home, people who, if they were exposed to the virus, may be more susceptible. So I think that's one group. I think there are other students that clearly just benefit from learning online. That's their learning style and it works well for them. To speak specifically to Union is a big picture school, and what that really means in action is that Union provides opportunities for students to personally explore career options. It includes internships 2 days a week. So students who attend Union spend 2 days a week out doing internships. And for a hands-on learner or a learner who benefits in a smaller environment, Union is a really good option. Once again, there are a number of students that are at Union for lots of different reasons. Some of those students, so do include students that just felt like they got lost in a really big system. And there are things we do at our comprehensive high schools to create smallness and largeness. One of those things is mentoring. But it still can be quite overwhelming for some students to attend, a Nampa high school with nearly 1,600 students.
Again, to clarify, so I know that there's different, like an alternative, and I'm just learning all this, alternative schools are more of, not as more violent type, that's what I mean with different students, because Tdla, I've talked to some of them, they're the administration, and it's more of a safe, where the kids aren't as violent, they're more just kind of falling through the cracks and more autistic or orphans or more inverted. They're not really violent. So that's why I'm asking for the comparison for the students at Tdla that would have to leave that facility who are not violent or dangerous. Would they fit in, do you understand my question?
Yeah, I think so.
Does Union have students that are more violent,
Not
aggressive?
No.
No, and Trustee Pearson, if I could just add a little bit to that. So the students at Tdla, many of them, as Mr. Lubu had mentioned, prefer a smaller learning environment. Some of them are at risk. Many students at Union are at risk. Many students at Columbia High are at risk. Pathways specializes in students who are at risk and helping them collect more credits. So, they will provide some options for those students in that kind of environment that they have. And I think one of our options may be able to do that for the majority of the students.
Couple of questions. So it was granted $1 million to start this school. Any opportunity for additional grants?
Not that I'm currently aware of, but I'll defer to Dr. Russell on that.
Yeah, Chair Bergman, we have not explored additional funds. Typically, when seed money is given from Bloom, it is exactly that, is seed money. The expectation is when you start, and part of the expectation is you meet those enrollments so that it can get off that money. But the school, to my knowledge, has not, at least since the pandemic started, exploring further grants.
Okay. And speaking of enrollment, just more curiosity, but perhaps why was the initial 2000, let me go back to the numbers here, 2017 and 18, 24 students when the anticipation was to have 200? Why so low? Was it just people didn't know about it? Was it something new and they're afraid to try it? Or, any idea?
So Chair Bergman,
Whoever wants to answer.
yeah, to my understanding, there was a marketing plan around it. There was specific steps that the school took to try to get the information out. And I think initially there was about 75 students that were interested, but they did not come. Part of that is starting in high school is hard. Students already have relationships, they already have friends, they already have activities that they can do at the other schools. And so some of those students just did not come then in first year. We missed that. It was kind of disappointing to see that originally. The first group that started was a great group. They enjoyed the school, and we were a little hopeful after the 18-19 year that we might be able to grow, but we missed it there. And then we've consistently missed it since. So I think originally there was that plan. It did not reach its initial goals. We were worried about it then. We tried to give it some options, and it just hasn't been able to get there.
The seed money for this, was it based on these projected enrollment numbers?
Yes.
Chair Bergman, yes, that is correct.
And then similar question, what happened in your opinion to it losing enrollment, or not actually, was it the COVID years? I mean, we can blame a lot of stuff on COVID years, but was that one of those things that kind of?
My personal opinion is that it's very difficult to attract students to not an alternative school, but a different school that doesn't provide the same options that exist at a comprehensive high school. If you're interested in band, athletics, not that we can't provide those opportunities, but those opportunities still exist through the comprehensive high school. There's probably one point of clarification too that needs to be made around the suggestion. Tdla, as I shared, is currently 6 through 12, and the recommendation would be to close 9 through 12. Grades 6 and 7 would be added to Park Ridge, and Park Ridge, or the Ridge, would become a K-8 school eventually. They do not have 7th graders there currently. They have 6th graders and 8th graders. We intentionally recruited 8th graders in the hope that we would garner the numbers necessary to build that up. So the intent would be that our current 6th graders would move up to 7th, and the following year it would become a K-8 program based on expeditionary learning.
And that would be housed at Park Ridge or the Ridge,
Correct.
in addition to the elementary students who are there.
That would be the school.
Chair Kirkman, if I just give a little history, Park Ridge Elementary, about 4 or 5 years ago, we were seeing a decline in enrollment in that area. There's actually homes being built there now, if you drive around there. But one of the ideas that we came across with Treasure Valley Leadership Academy was to try to create a smaller environment, a more K-8 program. We held several town hall meetings with parents. We held about 3 of them at spring. That would have been spring of 19. And one of the feedback the parents said is they really wanted to keep a neighborhood school there. They wanted some options for a smaller middle school. That is one of the things that we didn't have in the district, was a smaller 6-8 option. And so the district made a decision at that point to make it 6-8, move Tdla over there with hopefully a dream of maybe having cohorts move into that. But we still have missed the projections on the 9-12 part. We still believe that we can keep the K-8 going in the small environment that the neighborhood and families had wanted. So that's what we would like to do.
And the staff currently of Tdla, if that were to close, where would those staff go? Would they just be assimilated into other schools? And
Yeah, exactly. That's the intention.
so we're not going to lose any staff. We're not going to lose any teachers, correct? Staff and teachers.
No, what it helps us to do is become much more efficient with the tax dollars we have.
And the last thing you mentioned, sorry, what was the question? So the last thing you were talking about was the agreement. So there's an agreement with Tdla. What is that agreement?
So the agreement that was approved the year previous to this was a 3-year agreement.
With who?
Between you as a board.
Okay.
and actually we have got some legal counsel on that, and so that's definitely something that may need to be considered. One of the things within that agreement says that the school would be funded similarly to how our comprehensive schools are funded. That has never been the case. Tdla has always been super funded, and it's just come to a point right now where it's challenging. The principal is here today. Rick is a great advocate for his school, and he's advocated. He's like, I need more FTE. I really need the help. And the truth is, he does need more FTE to be able to run a high school program. It just doesn't make sense with so few students.
Okay. And Trustee Simpson, maybe you can help me a little bit clarifying on that agreement. That doesn't, I guess I can't wrap my head around how we've made an agreement with one of our schools to keep it funded.
So if I remember right, it was an innovation school agreement, which is Union is also still an innovation school as well, which was new legislation that went through our state when these 2 schools opened, Union and Tdla, that to be innovative schools, and they could operate a little bit differently than our other schools, and they had a little bit more autonomy within their building, but they had to have the contract with the district, with the board.
So Chair Kirkman, I could just elaborate on that a little bit. The innovation agreement is between the school board, the superintendent, and the staff there. It is an innovation agreement, and that was a law that was passed in the state. It allows some flexibility in reporting, so the school can actually set the metrics in which it reports. It allows some flexibility away from the master contract, although the staff at TBLA has decided to follow the master contract, but the law allowed them a little bit of that. Then it allows some flexibility on how they use their funding to hire the positions that they need. Typically, we as a district, we look at our enrollment, we look at our funding, and we give out at the FTE as we see needed for the students. Essentially, as Mr. Lubu has said, they would get funded similarly, but then they have flexibility within the school of how they hire that. So how many ELA teachers or counselors or however they want, that's the idea of innovation agreements, is so that they have the flexibility around that.
And our attorney is not here tonight, but maybe this is a question we need to reserve for him, but what would our liability as a school district be if this agreement was, if the decision was to end this TDLA? Would there be any liability?
I actually agree that there's been ongoing, because it hasn't been funded at the same rate as our other schools, like Mr. Lebu said, like that was in the contract, that this is, the intent was not to,
So the terms.
I mean, he calls it overfund, but I just think it's like how schools should be funded. Just gonna throw that out there.
I noticed that.
But yes, but compared to our other schools, yes, definitely in inflated funding when you compare the per pupil costs.
So what you're saying is the contract terms haven't been met up to this point anyway, since, okay.
That's my understanding, but
That's
I'm not
what
an
I'm
attorney.
saying. Yeah. Trustee Simpson? I'm sorry, Trustee Pearson.
Again, I'm just trying to understand this too, because I've just been talking with the TBLA and read a, real heartfelt email. And so to make this decision, I want to really make sure that I'm making the right decision, because I know this school means a lot to the students who are there. And these students have actually progressed successfully when they weren't before the school. So I do have to consider that. And on a side note, I visited Columbia and high school, and one of the questions I asked the principal, Corey, I don't know how to say his last name. Wilson. Yeah, thank you. I asked him, what are one of your biggest concerns, worries, or needs? And he said, students who are falling through the cracks. We have 1,300 plus students here. It's a big school, a lot of students, and there's students who just fall through the cracks, and we need a place for them. So to me, when I hear that and I look at the description of this school, why can't some of those students go to that school?
I believe there are a number of reasons that students may, I guess for lack of a better term, fall through cracks. The intent, I think, and I'll try and read the tea leaves, so to speak, of what Mr. Woolston might have been referring to. There are students that probably require what I would consider a true alternative school. That is not what TBLA is. TBLA is a smaller setting. It's not really an alternative school. I think what Mr. Woolston was referring to, and I have had conversations with our other comprehensive principals around a true alternative school, and an alternative school for students that pose risk of harm on their comprehensive campuses.
Trustee Pearson, so thank you for that comment. It is something that the district is exploring and considering. I think there is a need in a district our size to have something like that. We used to years ago have that. We moved into some of these innovation schools to provide some of those opportunities, and they became schools of choice, which there is value when students want to choose to come to a school. Typically, an alternative school is an assigned setting, but I think the sentiment is heard, and I do believe we need to start exploring that.
Trustee Taylor.
Thank you. So hearing you say you guys are going to keep up to 8th grade there, so this would just affect 9, 10, 11, 12, those 4 years. And so impact wise, because we have 36 total, how many kids?
So if we pull the graduates off, so our 12th graders will be graduating. So it would be the 8, 8, and 6. So 22 students.
22 total. That says good.
Sorry, follow-up question. How, you mentioned that there were eighth graders as well. Do you happen to know how many eighth graders that would roll up into ninth grade?
Put me on the spot, Mr. Jordan.
11-ish.
Okay.
Do we have working eighth graders? No. We have 11 or 12, top of my head. Yeah, and I can guarantee you right now, not all of those are planning to go to TDLA. Several of those are actually going to go back to comprehensive.
Yeah. Is there any other questions for Mr. Woodley before we let him sit down?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Rick, I forgot your last name. Jordan. Do you want to step up here and kind of, if you have some, we're not yet into public comments, but I think it'd be beneficial to hear from some of the staff at TDLA. Go ahead and come on up and.
Sure. Do you have questions? You want me to just speak first?
I think we have some questions.
Sure.
Or maybe we
I'd like to hear. I'd like to hear. I'd like
no
to hear what
questions.
you have
We
to
just
say
want
first.
to.
Okay. So I am principal of the whole building now. I was hired initially as the Park Ridge Elementary in this fall of 19, K5. Then we held off because of COVID. We held off adding to the middle school portion. And then in late October of last year is when I became, because the district, what happened was we also house Nova. So Nova's in our building also. And Nova exploded. And they exploded with one principal and one office manager. And so the district came in and said, hey, we need it. Nova needs help. And that's when they moved Emmett Wemp from TVLA and he went over and helped Nova. And then at that same time, then I took over the TVLA portion. So I've been the principal since late October of last year, took it over on the fly. I love our school. I love our kids. I love what we do. And I know there are students here and some staff here. But I also have a sign in my office, and it came from Shelley Bonds. And all of the elementary principals have it, and the sign says "We are one." And what that means is we don't talk about my kids and your kids. It's all our kids. And as much as it hurts to say that, I have to look at our kids. And so the kids at Pathways are our kids. The kids at Nova are our kids. They're my kids. Even though I don't teach there, I don't have any direct, the kids at Endeavor are my kids. The kids at TVLA are my kids, but so are all of the other kids in the district because we are one. And so with that and looking at that way, and we're short-staffed. Not only do we need more staff, not keep where we are staff. We need more staff, which means we need to spend $20,000 per, because Steve is right. I've been asking for more FTE last spring because we're coming up short. My teachers are spread so thin. They're already talking about, I can't do this another year. I can't do this. I already hired 3. I have 4 teachers. Social studies, math, science, and a half of an English teacher who also is half-time special ed. And she's special ed for 6 through 12. We're spread so thin that I'm ready to lose them in this situation. So thinking about all of that, my science teacher doesn't have a lab. We have a high school science. We don't have a lab because we're in an elementary school. So there's even more money. And so as much as I hate to say this, what's best for our kids is to not keep going. Again, I hate to say that. I hate to say it in front of kids I'm going to go to school with tomorrow. But as much as I support what we do, we're just not doing it for quite enough kids. And I'm also very confident that the 22 kids we have an amazing counselor. We will find the best possible places for those kids. I guarantee you that. But I just don't see it as sustainable. And one more thing, somebody said, "God, I hate to see it fail." I said, it didn't fail. Because if anybody was at graduation last year, they didn't fail. Our kids are amazing. It's just not viable, if that makes sense. So I think it had its good run of trying to do something. But and again, we will find places for our kids.
Yeah, Trustee Taylor.
I really appreciate how hard that must have been for you to say. I really, I want to cry just looking at you. Do you have a preference with our options in looking at those? I heard what you said, and do you feel if we were to motion to close at the end of this year, confident with those 22 placements?
Yeah, because, well, two things. One, I don't think we could recruit any new kids if we went another year.
Yeah.
Because they're gonna go, why would I show up for 1 year?
Right.
It's hard enough to get kids. And Trustee Pearson, I totally understand, hey, the kids falling through the cracks. But a lot of the kids that fall through the cracks don't know they're falling through the cracks, and they don't choose to come to our place, if that makes sense. We worked really hard last year to try to market as much as we could. We got out to middle schools, we gauged interest, we had open houses, and we got 9 kids. And so, two things. 21-22 would be my recommendation for recruiting and staffing. I think if we had to go another year, I had to hire 3 new teachers last year. I think I may have to do it again. And 3 out of 4, just the kids that were still here would have a whole new staff.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So at this point, we do have a couple of people signed up for public comment on this topic, on this agenda item. So Daniel Neef, are you here?
Yeah, can I have some of my students speak first? They've also signed up.
Oh, yeah, let me go down the line here, then let me, Brian Martinez, are you one of the students?
Yeah.
All right, come on up. You may have to hold that mic down.
Yeah.
All right.
Hi, my name is Brian Martinez. I would like to thank the board of the Nampa School District for giving me time to represent my school on behalf of Treasure Valley Leadership Academy. The reason for my being here this evening is that the foundation of my education is at its brink, and the educational opportunities provided to me at the school are going to risk with it. I've attended Treasure Valley Leadership Academy for 3 years going now, and I plan to get my high school diploma. Although that is looking unlikely, for the hope is diminishing with every word I am informed. Tdla is a place that encourages and offers the opportunity for students to be ahead and will never leave an opportunity for students to be left behind. Throughout the years of attending this leadership academy, I have not only learned how to be a better student, but how to be a better human overall. My school has been able to accomplish this with the concept of hands-on, one-on-one with each and every single one of our students. They sit down every week and ask us how we are. Mentally, educationally, at home, they care. Mental health is a big role in today's society. Social media plays a big role in that influence, and it's important to have an adult you can go to in those needs that you have. I deal with anxiety, and I'm comforted at the thought that when I arrive to school that there will be opportunity to ask for help, something I had not experienced prior to TVLA. This school allows students to complete their work at their own pace, even allowing room for students to get ahead, but never allowing room for them to stay behind. We're a community here, therefore we will strive as one. We're empowered to do great things at TVLA. But I ask you as my education leaders to empower us to do marvelous things. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well done, Ms. Martinez. Dean Green.
Hi there, I'm Damon. I would like to thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak here today. I am a student and founding member of Treasure Valley Leadership Academy. I would like to preface this by saying that I do have a speech impediment. This sometimes negatively impacts my ability to clearly represent myself. So please forgive me if I misspeak or if it is difficult to understand me at any point. Aside from my speech impediment that had an impact on my education, for years I struggled with depression and hallucinations, as well as ADHD that went unrecognized by my teacher and the staff in traditional schools. Having these undiagnosed and untreated symptoms and conditions left me with quite a severe impact, and I had given up on the responsibilities I had as a human to better the world around me. In the first month of attending the TVLA, after a single conversation with the school principal, who at the time was Emmett Webb, I had learned that I may have been going through these things, and he sent me on a path where I was diagnosed and treated for my mental illnesses. During this period, for the other teachers and staff helped me work through these problems and taught me to be an active member of our community, and they taught me to value myself and the impact on the world that I had to offer. I've seen myself succeed and succeed and succeed again when there was once a time that I believed I never would. I credit that to the conversation I had with Emmett that day. I credit that to the success to the system that allowed Emmett to speak to me on a personal level that day, and the system that allowed my teachers to work with me, knowing what I was going through so that they could ensure that I had learned material and that I had internalized their lessons regardless of how difficult it was for me. I credit my success to the mission that TVLA stands for, that mission being giving each one of their students the tools necessary to have a positive impact on their community and the world around them, and to achieve the greatness that they believed they could only dream of. I credit my success in life to the education system that I had hoped to one day repay by becoming a teacher and advocate for that system specifically. My goals for after high school were to become a teacher and to give students the tools that I was given to by my teachers to succeed in life. But if we snuff out the system here, I can only wonder if I'm making the right decision by going into education. I can only wonder if I can really make the difference I hope to do. If we don't allow this school to grow and the system that it offers to thrive here, I can only wonder if we as a country and community will ever truly see the progress that I believe many of us who stepped into education hope to see their work create.
Thank you.
Wilson Chester.
Hi, I'm Alyssa Chester. I'm a senior currently at Treasure Valley Leadership Academy. I just want to say that I really do love TVLA as a student. I was the second class after the founding class that came in, and the way I've always referred to TVLA as, I've been told it's called a magnet school or something other, but I've always referred to it as the perfect middle ground between public schooling and homeschooling, because I've been through both. I remember there were times where I would go up and ask a teacher for help on something, whether that be a school assignment or a personal life issue, and I would be sent back to my seat because they didn't care. And then homeschooling, was a completely different scenario, but it was hard for me to get the drive to do what I had to learn every day. But with the freedom that we've had with TVLA and the care that our teachers have given us, I have been able to achieve my goals as a person. And like my peers have said, they have taught us how to be a better like community helper, and they've given us projects that we can do to help our community and just to be better to each other. There is no violence at all at TVLA. I have rarely ever seen anything that was like, oh gosh, this is like scary. So I think it's just a safe place to be. And yes, some people may wonder, you're a senior, why are you here talking to the school board? Because you're going to be graduating this year. But it's not really for me, more as for the students that are under me. Because of the impact that I've had at TVLA with the teachers that are there and the education that I have received, I want other people, other students to be able to have that same education and have that same impact, have the same friendships with the teachers that I've had. Because I know that there are plenty other kids just like me who struggled with anxiety and depression and stress. But I was able to find a good place to be for my schooling. TVLA is like my second home. It's always been my second home to go. If I couldn't talk about something at my house, I could always go to one of my teachers at school and just rant for a bit, and we'd have like a good conversation. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's pretty well played, but you can come up and give your comments.
That's a really good job. Thank you, Chairman Kirk, Trustee Pearson, for giving me this time to share with my students and address the board this evening. My name is Dan Neef. I'm a teacher at Treasure Valley Leadership Academy. And just a little bit of background on myself. I've been teaching social studies for 8 years. But when I was in 5th grade, I couldn't read. I was dyslexic. Perhaps that's why I won't ever give up on the underdog. I sent the email last month because I was struggling to practice what I teach. See, despite the number of self-help books on leadership, all that's really required is firstly a leader to know the truth and then communicate. Truth is, I'm standing up for a lot of people who can't stand up for themselves. I'm writing for those who can't. I'm speaking for many who simply don't feel like they matter. Sidebar, I apologize if my email was a little direct. I'm a recovering attorney, and people don't usually
Well, it's completely
like me after.
Yeah.
When it comes to building community, we are the front line to empower its citizens. We are building the future citizens of America. In 2022, 93% of our students are at risk at TVLA. I'm no math teacher, but that is extremely high. Our students have been abused, abandoned, and undiagnosed. TVLA is an innovation school of choice, but the fact is most of our students have chosen this school for the simple reason that regular school simply couldn't work for them. Our students came to TVLA not because it's a better chance, because TVLA was their last chance. So at this point, I'd be very, very clear. There's no evil villains wearing black robes running around the Nampa School District. I cannot and will never say TVLA discontinuation is a bad decision made by bad people. It's a very, very difficult decision. But I would not be doing my job if I didn't stand up and speak for my students now. As hard as it is to say TVLA as it is not sustainable. Every day we are fighting on every front. We have no reserves, no plan, and now no hope. From academics to abuse to behavior to controlled substances, we deal with it all. Just this last month, we had 2 of our students orphaned. We have a student who cannot speak that uses speech to text to pass his speech class. Another student was finally diagnosed as having short-term memory problems, so she literally cannot understand verbal directions. But if you give her the picture, she can reach the standard. But while it's meaningful to fill a need, our days at Tdla are also incredibly stressful, knowing that you are a student's best chance. Can I please have some more time? And because all the staff are all in, is unthinkable to imagine replacing any of our staff. Where do you find a counselor who will literally hunt down students to complete applications and financial aid forms? A science teacher who can teach every discipline without a lab, a math teacher that customized 5 different grade levels to more than 50 different learners, both in person and online. An English teacher that has to service 6 grades of special ed and 4 years of language arts. Finally, me. An honors graduate from law school who must constantly update the standard narrative that our country is nothing more than a racist, misogynist, pointless experiment that has lost all hope. I need to make this crystal clear. If Tdla continues, we must have full-time special education resources. But more than anything, if we are to survive, we need a future. We have to have hope. We cannot operate with a sword dangling over our heads. I will end by saying what I wrote in my email is true. There's an incredible need for the place like Tdla. But also the Tdla students are nothing unique in America or even in Nampa. Even today, hundreds of students are dropping out of the Nampa School District. No one really wants to address the problem. It's because each one of those persons is its own problem. It's not a campaign promise. It's not a Democrat or Republican promise. It's simply giving each student the space to fail and the confidence to succeed. But I am truly struggling. I became a teacher to prove to people that life comes down to acting in 2 ways. One is we're all just random results of biology, and so nothing we do matters. And therefore, nothing is ever our fault. Or the second way, every choice we make in life matters. And therefore, we are all not only made of matter, but everything we choose to do or not do will matter. And although I like to act as if I matter some days, it's so much easier to say I really don't matter. For example, right? It's much easier to say nothing we do here today will matter a year from now. And of course, it's not our fault. Acting like we really don't matter is not what I believe, and it's not what I teach, and hopefully not how I act. I have no doubt that my students matter, and therefore I believe what I do today not only is a plea for help, but also an example of what leaders do. We act as if every single person is capable of saving the world. So finally, one last story. When I was told on February 11th that Tdla was to be closed, I was crushed. I felt like if I just had more time, I might be able to build something in education that actually mattered. Losing the dream was crushing, but that's not the sad part of the story. 3 weeks later, when we announced to our students that they needed a plan not attending Tdla next year, there were no tears, no outrage, no displays of an emotion. 93% of students already behind, having one more adult tell them they don't matter is simply all they know. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. That's all I have signed up for Tdla public comments. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak? Come on up. We'll put 3 minutes up on the board.
I was not prepared to speak on this. My name is Kristen Young. I just wanted to speak from a mom's heart. And I look around the room and I wonder why we're all here and who we're here for. We're here for that one kid. We're here for every kid. And every kid has so many different learning styles or whatever. And to have a school that a kid feels like they're at home and that they can go to. I think about my son, and we have been trying to figure out what's going on, and we finally found that he's dyslexic. And I think about the hope that someone has for their child or for themselves, and knowing that there's something like this out there. I've never heard of it, but I just sit there and I think about all the what ifs. What if we were able to market this different, or what if we were able to share this different where more people hear about it? Yeah, that's it.
Okay, thank you. Is there someone else? I thought I saw a hand. Come on up.
I'm supposed to write my name, aren't I?
Yeah, and then just say it.
While he's doing that, I just want to say it's hard and just.
I'm sorry. We need your name also. Just
I'll sign in. Yeah.
Okay, very good.
My name's Chris. My son Gabriel is a student at Tdla. This is his first year there. For the life of me, I never knew schools like this existed. You know, I was a high school failure. I was one of the people that fell through the cracks. It's schools like this that help students like this, find them, diagnose them, and cater to what they need to grow. They would have been, oh, thanks for signing my name. It's just like my signature. It's terrible. Anyway, I just, you know, as I was saying, I fell through because they weren't able to diagnose me. I was part of the generation where it was sit down, shut up, fit the mold. Best of luck to you in the world, okay? The growing need of children that are on the spectrum that you say fall through the cracks or whatever, some think that they're anger issues or whatever, it's that they're not being diagnosed. They're not being recognized. When we went through this, it was diagnosed first as OCD, ADHD, and then it was found that it was actually, you know, on the spectrum. Schools like this absolutely fill that need. And like she said, marketing. I'm over here listening to this. Well, it didn't meet the number. I understand the numbers. I mean, math isn't my strong suit, but I get it. If the funding is not there, it's not there. What can you do? Your hands are tied. But I'm sitting here going, why aren't we marketing it different? Go out to the schools and say, these students that you're struggling with, the teachers, the counselors, and these other districts that are seeing these students struggle, go, you know what? There might be a better opportunity. Instead of just graduating with D's like I did, freshman already taken a college credit because of her, because of this school. So let's keep it going for the kids like this. Like she said, it's not just about her. She's graduating. Congratulations. But she's concerned. They've instilled this in her, that she's concerned about the next generation. Even 1 year, that's not enough time. Even if you guys postpone it this year and say, let's give it one more year, it's not enough time. It might be enough time to maybe continue to market and address it and just keep going and keep going. But anyways, I'm not steal the spotlight. I want him to say what he wants to say.
Given the fact that he stole like most of my 3 minutes, may I get another 3 minutes? I'd just like to say that in the past couple of years, yeah, I did get diagnosed with stuff, but for the last couple of years, I have been a straight A student. And here's the thing, this school I thought would be good because I am a straight A student. The other schools were, to be frank, easy, too easy. They didn't challenge me. They didn't teach me. This school actually taught me. Heck, my planned career is video game making. In my free time, I am making a video game. I am actually able to prepare for my career, for my life at another high school, I don't think I'd be able to say that. I don't think I would actually stand up here if it were some random school getting shut down. This place, like other students have said, does feel like a second home. Does feel like a place where I'm safe, where I can talk, where I have friends. I can just tell pretty much anything. This place, it is special. No, honestly, that is really just what I had to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, we're only letting students come up here and talk from now on. No, anyone else, public comment for this agenda item? Go ahead and come on up.
Yeah, my name is Marco Valle. I just wanted to say something. I get this. My son was part of that. I was part of that when I came to this country, when the teachers would push me aside because they didn't know what to do with me. And they would just mark D because it's better to mark D, right? Than to have to deal with this guy again. Okay, this is very interesting because the numbers do suck. They don't make sense. But it's time to think out of the box. You know how you guys like to postpone things to think about and look at opportunities, look at things, look where funding can come from, look at where companies can come and donate, look at the emails you can send to people, tell the story. Each one of these kids have a story. This is not over. If you think this is over, then you've given up too quick. Because I think the community can rally if you do it right. I just want to say that this is one of those things that is worth saving.
Thank you.
Thank you. Come on up.
Mike Fuller. Appreciate that the board listens. And as I've taken notes here for a little bit, I'd like to point out that, in my opinion, the most important item on your agenda tonight is item number G. Unfortunately, it's not that well described. You're going to discuss graduation rates. My experience and looking into the question as to whether or not school boards make a difference, the one item that I found is that the more time you spend discussing students, and I'll add listening to students tonight, the more time a school board spends in their board meetings, receiving reports from the superintendent on achievement and collaboratively setting goals about youth are the school districts to make a difference. And so I have a few questions you might consider on this topic. Why is Tdla not a placement school like the others? What models have not been explored? You already have an innovative school agreement in place. You already have a shell in place. You're going to be discussing graduation rates a few items down from here. I think this is a great opportunity as you're becoming a new school board to go from just deciding about gyms, put those on your consent agendas, and instruct your superintendent to meet some goals and support the superintendent and the staff in meeting those goals.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to comment on this agenda item? All right. Oh, that was close.
My name is Lisa Rutledge, and I'm a teacher at TVLA, and I'm going to write my name down. So when you talk about the cost per student, all our students are asking for is a small environment. They don't have sports, they don't have band, they're giving up pep rallies, all of that, all because they want a small, safe school. And so yes, it will cost more per student. but these are people, these are our kids. And what we thought was going to happen with the school, that idea didn't really work well. We thought we were going to go one way, and the students that we got were a totally different set of students. We got the kids that we got are not what we expected, and so Plan A didn't really fit. What we could do is we could remodel what we're doing to meet the needs of more kids, because we're kind of locked in a box. And if we considered other ways of doing things, perhaps we can get more students. And considering that 93% of our kids are at risk, they do cost more. You know, that's fair. They're not the average ordinary student that fits at a traditional school. So it's okay that they need more funding than other students. And yes, I teach 6 different classes. It's hard. It's hard and it's frustrating, and we're overworked. But at the end of the day, we love the kids, and we know, I mean, we didn't tell any of these kids to come. These kids just asked to come. I came because I heard that some kids were going to come, and so I thought I'd be there for them. Yeah, so maybe we could table it and think of a plan that could work, that could make some numbers work a little bit better and not overwhelm the staff, but still find those kids, like the ones that spoke. I'm so proud of them that they were able to come up and stand in front of adults and talk and plead their case. I am amazed at them. And as hard as it is, I really want it to work, because it is working for the kids that it's working for. And there's more kids out there. Okay, I took it my time.
All right, thank you. Hold on a second. Well, go ahead and come up. You can come up after her, okay? Go ahead.
I'm fine until I actually try to speak words. My name is Stephanie, and I have 2 students who did not attend TVLA, and I had wanted them to. And everything I heard tonight, because I was listening online before I came, like, confirmed that my gut instinct was right, that they would have been really, like, I think they would have done well there. And at the same time, I cannot really complain. No situation is perfect. I'm just thankful that the students and the parents and the staff at TVLA who have spoken have been able to share, like, what success stories they had, because I have an autistic child, and her struggles brought a lot of insight to my own teenage years in particular, but my childhood in general. But I definitely, just as a random parent, like, I would support any efforts to get more parents and more of the district to understand what a great benefit the TVLA school is to our district and to the individual students. And I don't know how strengthening the weakest parts cannot make our whole district stronger. That's just the nature of humanity and communities, that if you strengthen the weak parts, or the parts that seem to be the weakest, those end up being the parts that are actually the strongest. So just thank you.
Stephanie, excuse me. Your last name?
It's Haley.
Stephanie Haley. Okay, just need it for the record, but appreciate your comments.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, come on in.
My name's Steve Tanner. This topic's kind of dear to me because my wife and I adopted a son 25 years ago, and we learned very soon that he had learning disabilities, and he struggled. We didn't have a resource like TVLA. Had we, I think we would have gone that direction, or at least explored that. And well, listening back there, sitting back there, I'm sitting in the back. Not everybody speaks real loud, and I was having trouble seeing the screen. I'm wondering, what would it take in order to, I don't know that I heard an answer, what it would take to make this program sustainable. And also, I'm just thinking, you know, we could do something different, perhaps solicit some of the major companies in the area. Maybe they'd like to champion a program like this, and they could put that on their resume. But I'd like to see this explored more. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, anyone else before I end the public comment? All right. That being said, thoughts from the board? Comments? Well, Trustee Simpson, we'll just go down the line here, and that way we're not going to step on each other's toes.
So I actually, want to look at the graduation rate data. Is there any way, Peter, you'll put that up for us? The longitudinal one. Oh, sorry. And then the tab is the school grad rate comparison, please. I normally don't like to look at this chart, so I'm just gonna apologize to every principal in our district, our high school principals. Like, I'm not trying to call anybody out. I hope you know that. That's not my heart. I know everybody's working their tails off for kids in this district, and you're doing the very best you can with what we've got currently. But if you scroll down, well, even in that table, but I think the picture paints a better picture, like people can visually see it. And I will tell you, the graphic looks like that black bar is a little bit higher than that blue one, and it's not. Just FYI, it shouldn't be anyway. But if you can see that, that's an 80% grab rate. That's a stinking good grad rate. And I know this is like, my head and my heart has been fighting and wrestling all week with this. Because my head says it's not financially responsible. And my heart says every kid matters, which is what we've been hearing and what is important. But then my head also began to think about it this way, is that, yeah, that's the kind of difference we want to make, right? When you talk about what kind of schools and what kind of outcomes we want to have coming out of our schools, we want to have this, where it doesn't matter that there's a 93% risk rate, because nobody's looking at that. They're looking at, they got 80% graduation rate. They're kicking butt and taking names, right? And it is the setting that matters. And it is the call that I will tell you, like, we all can make a difference, but when we work together and we speak together, this is the issue. That funding rate. These kids deserve more. And I love it. All our kids deserve more. Because to me, $7,800,000 per kid, they're worth so much more. They're worth so much more. I did the calculation, so there might be other things in there, but
the TDLA student rate was $9,729. So I might be missing things, but based on the numbers we got, it actually is a little bit closer to the 8,000. So it's not even that much more. Things I wrote down that I don't have the answers to, probably just more questions. Similar, like, why is this not a placement school? Why are we not reworking the innovation agreement to fit the model that's working, right? To fit how this works, because maybe it doesn't need to be funded at the same rate as the rest of our comprehensive schools. Maybe it needs to be a placement school, and maybe we need to fund it at a slightly different rate than our traditional high schools. I did quickly like Google search grants, not to say that there's anything, but I found 3 possible grant opportunities. I just, like I'm hearing you say, more time. More time needs to be spent, and it's time well spent. It's time well spent to me for one kid. And we got a whole group of kids here. So it's time well spent. I also wrote down something. I probably was a junior in high school when someone shared this quote with me. Never deprive someone of hope. It may be all they have. And I've been on that ledge. That's all you're holding on to. And I don't know. I don't have big answers for today. I think hopefully you're hearing from me that I want to spend more time on this, which was one of the recommendations, to table it until April, to look at it differently. I don't know. I don't know, but I think it's working. So why do you stop something that's working? Now, it's working for kids. I do hear it's not sustainable though, right? I heard that, and I heard it loud and clear. And I think this is one of those things that, like, having employees in the supplemental levy, like, people need to understand there's reasons for it, right? It's not supplemental. It's needed. It's essential. We need it. We need more, you know? All of our kids deserve more, but we have an opportunity right now in this moment to possibly do more for a small group. And I think sometimes that's the biggest thing we can do, right? Is we can make a small change that'll make a big impact, that can start things moving in other directions for other schools in our other buildings. Maybe it does need to be a placement school. Maybe we do have students that are comprehensive high schools can say, this might be a really good fit. And sometimes, right, like, when you're in the trenches and you sometimes got your blinders on because you're just doing the very best you can to help the kids that are sitting in front of you, right, in your building, and you're doing that, and sometimes you don't realize who else is on your team that might be able to help. And I feel like this is an asset. And I don't know. I know financially it doesn't make sense. But I'm also never been a trustee who's been conservative about spending money on educating kids. Never. I probably never will be. So I mean, I don't have a problem with that. And people probably won't be surprised. So yeah, I mean, I think clearly nothing has been motioned. I want you guys to have a chance to speak, but I'm definitely leaning for leaving it until April and let's see. What are some other things? How many staff exactly? I even wrote down sponsor a student. You know, if somebody could sponsor a student for $3,000, $4,000 a year and up that per pupil spending. I don't know. Can we even do that? I don't know. Dr. Russell, is that even possible? Fundraiser for to pay? I don't know. Like maybe it's not, but and maybe we don't know, but I don't know. One way.
Trustee Simpson, I appreciate, the comments and the thoughts around it. I have many thoughts. And so I guess to answer your question, one of them is, have we done that? I'm not aware. I'm not sure. What I do know is sponsoring is not a sustainable budget that we can count on consistently. And, my role is not an easy role because I look at each of these kids and you're right, every single one of them is amazing. They have great potential. I'm so proud of the fact that they stood up and talked and advocated. But I look at the three men back there. Those are the three comprehensive high schools. And they have hundreds of kids who are just like our students here. And they work very hard. Our teachers work very hard to support them all throughout our district. And so it's hard to look at one and not see the whole, which is my responsibility, is to see the whole. So it's a tough one for me.
Thank you, Trustee Simpson. Sorry, Trustee Pearson. I'm looking at.
He's looking at me.
Trustee Pearson.
Well, when I read about the school and I called and talked to some of the staff, it just really touched my heart. And I know that the numbers don't look good. However, again, I feel like we're here for the students. We contribute for these students. And so there's 37 students who are actually at the higher rate of the suicide. And we're going to end these students and send them other places when there's 1,300 students at this one Columbia, which I would think there's probably some of those students that would fit in the Tdla. I just don't think it's been advertised enough. I never heard of it. I hear other parents who haven't heard about it. And I know there is hundreds of students who fit the Tdla criteria that just are not being heard, or they're just lost in that because they don't know what to do. And there's just too many kids in the bigger high schools. And I don't know, I just think that we need to find time to advertise or promote or bring this out more. I don't think there's enough people who know about this. I think there's many more students who need this type of school, and I don't want to see it closed. I would not motion to close it. And maybe like the one gentleman said, changing the model, exploring different ways of maybe funding, even with the state, when you use different terminology with the students. There's different types of funding. I don't know. So
Thanks, Trustee Taylor. Anything?
I'm going to ditto everything Mandy said.
I know.
Yes, I agree with Mandy. Man, first of all, thank you to the kids who came, because this job is hard and you just made up all with it. So thank you. For you to be able to speak and articulate and show your love like that and the difference that it's making in your lives is truly impactful. I'm with you guys. We have a big decision to make. This is where my best practice of saying just time for us to do due diligence, right? Like it's becoming a pattern because we make big decisions that affect children. If we keep doing what we've always done, we're going to get what we've always gotten. And as I sit in this job, so many things are just broken. It's really nobody's fault. That's the hard part. We have phenomenal educators in our school, more than what was heard tonight. As I sit here, I can hear a specific teacher in my head so many times as I struggled with my own son. So I know that there are plenty of really great people in our district teaching and doing great work. So I totally appreciate what Craig said. But I do agree that we need more time with this. I really like what we had to say. I think that
I think that we have to try everything. I think that I would do it for one child. Doesn't matter. I would do it for one. So I think we have to try. So Amanda, I appreciate what you said. Surely.
Thank you. So Dr. Russell is not in an enviable position, because whatever the decision of the board is, whether it's tonight or whether it's down the road, the superintendent and his staff have to implement that decision, and it's going to be a rough one. You know, I always look at situations like this and ask the question. I think sometimes we ask the wrong question, and the question I think on this we should be asking is, how can we keep this open? Not why do we need to close it? We all know the why, and it does come down to money. And everyone's sitting out here is if we had the money, we'd have 100 of these innovation schools. I think it's a fantastic idea, and definitely it works. So impressed by Mr. Martinez and your testimony. All of you students. I mean, that shows right there that it's working. That you are becoming adults. You are becoming responsible adults that can stand in front of people and voice your opinion. And that's what this is all about. That's what school and education is all about, is preparing you. It's in our vision statement. It's preparing, giving students, helping them be fully engaged in the educational experience so they become better for what's next. You looking up that vision real quick? I appreciate that. You know, fully engaged in extraordinary learning experiences. That's why we have this vision, is it helps guide us in our decisions and what we make. On the other hand, and not to beat a dead horse here, but we do have to look at the funding. Are there other options? I believe there is. And I think this is one of those situations that instead of looking at the funding right now, we make a decision to keep it open and find the funding. We find somehow to keep this school open. I know that we need to market this better. I understand the staffing at Tdla. That's something that we need to work on up here. You're asking the right questions. I need more staff. How can I get more staff? We need to expand this. We need to, what's the word I'm looking for? We just need to expand it to more. I like the placement school idea. That was one thing I was thinking about too. And I was thinking referrals and placements and all that kind of stuff. But I think there's a lot more questions that need to be answered before we make a decision, in my opinion, on whether to shutter this school. I think, yeah, I'm a little bit surprised at the numbers, but I don't think that's any of the staff's fault. Obviously, the graduation rate threw that right out of the water. I think it's, do people know about this? Do people know about this? But we also need to take into consideration, what will that do to our other high schools and our other schools? Because that's the global view that we do have to take as a board. I was just looking at some of the policy here, and just looking at the policy the board provides for the planning, expansion, improvement, financing, construction, maintenance, use, and disposition of the school, of all the physical plants in the school building, which means our school system, which means the schools. So I think there's a lot of questions that need to be asked and discussed and explored before I'm willing to pull the rug out from underneath Tdla. It's obvious that it's successful. I think we owe it to the community to make sure that we're crossing every T and that we're dotting every I before we make that really difficult decision. That's my opinion. And sometimes I'm not so much of a conservative when it comes to spending on kids, but there's always so much others as part of that conversation too. So
Can I ask
please do.
a question to Mr. Jordan?
Absolutely. If he's willing to answer it.
If you're willing to answer, can I ask you a question?
We need you to come up here to the mic though, Mr. Jordan, please.
Sorry. And I feel like this is something to your staff as well. I'm just wondering if between now and the next meeting, you guys could have, not a full-blown like new innovation agreement or anything like that. No, nothing like that. But just like, what is the need? What is the FTE need to be sustainable?
what might be included in a new agreement so that it does fit. Right, I heard like it doesn't match the kids that came in, and so is there something that would match better? I'm not asking for a rough draft, probably. Would that be too much to ask?
No, I don't think so. I
Staff?
actually think we could maybe do that. So I'm thinking in my head, forward, well, where else do I think? But you know, my wife would tell me that I think in other places that don't get me anywhere. But I'm thinking that we do have to do recruiting. And that can be held off a little bit. Another thought is especially facility wise, is there another spot that this could go to? That could maybe be a school within a school. And so there are those resources that I'm asking for could be more readily like special ed. That's probably my first one to open up my English position. Is there another space? Is there another space where my science teacher could have a lab? Again, top of my head, you have my head swimming back here on some ideas, but we could definitely put together probably in a few days or maybe right after spring break to at least get you some ideas. I also want to talk with my leadership. This is not just a, hey, let's do this at the building level. So yeah, if we could come up with some ideas.
One of my stipulations would be that nobody's working on it over spring break. Because I want you and your staff to rest and your kids to
I'm
rest.
playing 6 rounds of golf in Phoenix, so they don't worry about that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that speaks right to those questions that need to be further explored. So, Trustee Taylor?
Did you have the other 3 principals here to speak to this as well? Is that what I heard you say?
Chair Kirkman, Trustee Taylor, no, they are here to speak on another item.
Trustee, Chair Huffman, if we were to table that to the April 11th meeting, and spring break is the last week in April, or when is it?
It's next week.
Next week.
If possible, if you could get the packet information, so the proposal, maybe the rewording of potentially working out some adjustments to the agreement, and a proposal for resources and FTE by April 1st.
So is this something that we could discuss in a work session?
We could, or I
Little
could
bit
work
more.
with them to get it
Okay.
to you if that works.
Yeah.
Okay.
Probably, that'd probably be a little bit more efficient. So the clerk will reach out to you about some other.
Okay.
But I think definitely questions that need to be explored. Thank you.
All right, thank
Oh,
you.
did you have a question? Oh, okay. Thank you.
I move that we table this item. And I want to include that we ask Mr. Jordan and his leadership team as staff at Tdla work with Chrissy to get some of those things. What are the needs? How could it look in a different building or in a place within a building? All those ideas you were talking about. That's my motion.
All right.
Sorry.
I
Wasn't very
second.
smooth.
Okay. There's been a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on that motion? Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Oh, hold on.
I'm sorry.
Am I out of line? I might be out of line.
What line are you on?
I think I'm out of line because I should have just asked our interim superintendent. I'm sorry. I'm way out of line today. I apologize.
Yeah, spring break.
Trustee Simpson, it is perfectly fine. I think I was reading through what you were saying, and I think maybe the administration would like to explore some options, so they ask some questions, so I'm aware of that.
Sorry.
We'll work as a team
Yes.
to try to bring those to the board, and we'll work with our clerk, Ms. Lamont, to make sure that we have some answers.
And I knew you would, but I apologize because I think I can involve right over the line actually on that one. So sorry.
Motion still as motion?
Yeah.
Okay, it's been seconded, so any further discussion? If there is none, then all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed to that motion? Yeah, motion carries. Before we move on, just another thank you. Thank you so much for you young people who come up here and put yourself out a little bit. It was uncomfortable, but that's how we grow. And it was just incredible to see you come up and speak your mind and speak from your heart. It touched all of us up here. So much appreciated. And congratulations on graduating.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. So,
And you may leave if you want.
yeah, I was gonna say, before we move on to the next item.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
And congratulations on the recovering attorney thing.
Just gonna say thank you for having us.
So while
Thank you
they're
for
exiting, I'm gonna ask the board to take about a 5-minute break or something.
Thank you. Now I can pass it.
All right, we're good to go. We have reconvened.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is the appointment of Zone 2 trustee. So we had 3 candidates who had applied for the open position from Zone 2. We did interviews. There was an application process. We did interviews last week, was it?
Monday.
I'm losing my sense of time. And then it was tabled to tonight for a regular board meeting, so we will select a new trustee. So before I open it for public comment, well, I don't think we need to. We can just open it for public comment because I think we've had some discussion and we might have some after public comment. So I have a couple of people signed up on this sheet. Kristen Young, you are signed up. You want to speak?
Yes, I'm a little bit better when it's all on paper. It's a little bit easier, I think. Good evening. My name is Kristen Young and I am a Zone 2 resident. I just want to thank you all so much for taking the time and considering what the community think, or taking time to consider what the community thinks and how they feel about the Zone 2 candidates. That is a demonstration that you truly see us as a priority, so thank you so much. I had the opportunity to listen to each candidate last week. They all did a wonderful job and each one of them had great things to say. As a Zone 2 resident, I believe that Marco would represent us best. Marco has a lot of great outlooks and ideas to consider and bring to the table. One thing that I love that Marco said and touched on was thinking outside the box. I feel as though we are in a time where we need to think outside the box and come up with creative ideas and action plans, because obviously what we have been doing isn't working. He briefly touched on suicides, with that being an issue nationwide, but more importantly in Nampa, I do believe we need to think outside the box and bring on someone like Marco with passion to spearhead that. We cannot afford to lose one more child to suicide, and the fact that he recognizes that speaks volumes to me. Another topic I love that Marco touched on was the understanding and passion that he has for children with disabilities. This is an area that districts across the nation have failed in and lacked in for so many years. My brother is mentally handicapped, and I saw the fight it is to get these kids help they need firsthand at a very young age, and I started to experience it myself. There is no better understanding to this than a parent that has walked this struggle themselves, and oftentimes by the end of it, that parent becomes a professional in it. Have we ever had a board member to represent the Hispanic people in our community? I love that Marco can close that gap in this area and bring unity in the community as a whole. As Nampa is growing, so is the Hispanic community. Nampa is made up of about 25%, I think more, of Hispanic people. I believe that this is something to consider as we're trying to do things better and different. This is an area that can bring the unity of all people together. Lastly, we tried establishment before and it failed. We tried many things in the past and the result was overreach of power. Parents and community members were silenced and labeled as many different things. I truly believe in order to do better, we do different and we give it a shot. Thank you.
Thank you, Kristen.
Thank you.
Bessie, you signed up on this one also?
I really hope I don't go over 3 minutes. I hope I can speak with as much confidence as the students of TV or the TVLA did, because you know, I would have spoke when after they spoke, but I would have fallen apart because so many of them were special needs themselves, and
when I come up here and advocate, I advocate for the special ed community, as many of you know that. And my son suffers with a severe form of autism. So what I'm about to say about the Zone 2 trustee applies directly to that. So I have been watching the interview process of the candidates and these are my suggestions. I really wanted this board to consider candidates who had an interest in special education, and I was looking forward to interview questions that would shed light on how they would be able to serve populations of students in the district with different challenges in education, particularly those with special needs and disabilities. Coming into this role with this focus would really impact the community of children in the future, and I felt like these types of questions would have been warranted and crucial in your decision-making process. After taking all candidates' answers into account and reflecting on their backgrounds, energy, impressions, and presence, I asked myself some questions. Who did I feel comfortable approaching? Who would I find it the easiest to communicate with? I came to the conclusion that I would choose to advocate for Lonnie Dawson, and this is why. Lonnie publicly stated that if it became a conflict of interest for him to serve on this board or quit his job working for Brown Bus, he would choose to continue to work with the kids at Brown Bus because he did not want to quit his kids. He's invested in them, and that spoke to me. Something I've been struggling with is how others' decisions impact my disabled son. I believe that if a parent of Zone 2 brought up some of the same struggles to Lonnie, he would hear them and interact with them and look for solutions and listen to suggestions. He has a calm and collected composure and brings to the board prior board experience and seems genuinely willing to work with the other trustees to make the best board for the kids. In conclusion, while my worry is not having someone to fill the big shoes of Mike Kipp with a special heart for special education, I found it helpful that Lonnie has been so open to learning about issues he doesn't have direct experience with. Lonnie really gave me and many others whom I talked to the impression that he was able to serve, represent, and be a vessel for the people. Lastly, as a veteran myself, I want to thank Lonnie for his service to our country and his willingness to continue to serve our community here in Nampa. His duty to our country would no doubt be a huge asset to our board. Please take into consideration my concerns as it is my intent to endorse someone that I believe would work well with this board and the community he would serve. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? That's all I have signed up. So is there anyone else that would like to speak to this agenda item? Go ahead.
Steve Tanner again. I was really amazed in listening to the candidates last week. I thought all three just did a great job, considering they were fielding questions, sort of impromptu, in front of a lot of people. So glad it wasn't me. And considering that you said that you were only able to get 3 candidates or only 3 responded, I thought, wow, you got 3 really quality people that came. Myself, though, you know, in thinking it over, I think I'm also going to support Mr. Bayan. And the reason for that is that one, he talked about being creative, or he gave some creative solutions, you know, such as the idea of sending home communications in a utility bill. You know, that's great. I think parents would read that. That'd be kind of surprising. But just creative ideas like that, plus the fact that he mentioned he was born in another country, I think I'm correct, and that he would bring a perspective not only from a Hispanic culture, but also from school systems and how they operate in a different country. I like the idea of him saying that he's in favor of preparing kids for life and offering them courses that they would need for life, such as home financial education. And so I just felt like, and also it was brought up, I think I saw him in Debbie Kling's, Mayor Kling's newsletter this week that the Hispanic community represents about 25% of Nampa. And I, like the previous person, I think it would be great to close that gap and have that community represented here. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak, public comment? Okay. Well, trustees, now's the time. So I have some ballots here. We're gonna do this by ballot.
You are required to, you're gonna go over the ballot.
Yeah, so you'll mark the ballot of the person that you choose. Please sign it with your name. And then we'll give them to the clerk. It's not a secret ballot. It's just, I'll just shut up talking and just do what you need to do. She's gonna read them off so you know who. So as you're collecting those, if I'm not mistaken, so tonight they will not be sworn in. It'll be next, the regular board meeting.
April 11th.
April 11th will be the swearing in.
Yes.
So any meetings between now and then, though, we would invite that individual to attend a special meeting, whatever the board is going to be attending, you would ask that individual to attend also. Okay,
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
No.
Do you have any questions before? All right, go ahead.
It looks like it's unanimous for Marco Valle.
Valle, yeah. Okay, Marco. Stand up so people can see you. No, we don't need to hear from you at all. You were already selected. No, you can say something if you'd like. We'll give you the lifetime.
Thank you so much. I do have time in my hands to serve. Just to let you know, I do have time. And I also serve in the military, to let you know. And I also, believe me, I will take care of our disabled individuals. And to me, that matters. That matters. It's not a question of being conservative or Republican or Democrat. It's a question of serving our kids. And sometimes I speak too loud, but I am very passionate, and I will hold people accountable to what they say. And I know people will hold me accountable. So thank you so much. I will do my best.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I also want to make sure that,
We still need to make a motion to appoint when you get there.
oh yeah, we might need to get there, but right after I make this comment. So I do want to thank all of the candidates. Lonnie, absolutely. Any one of these would have been just absolutely great and a great asset to the board. And Aaron, Mr. Callis, thank you very much. Appreciate your willingness to put yourself out there. I honestly did think we would get quite a few more, so that's even a, to put yourself out there like that and open yourself to whatever you may be subjected to on the board. So really do appreciate that. Hope you stay engaged. And for that, I will entertain a motion.
I move that we appoint Marco Valle as the Zone 2 trustee. A second.
Motion has been made, it's been seconded. Any discussion on the motion?
I just want to ditto what you said and say all three of you gave us something to think about, and really it came down to the wire because we got three really very unique but also very qualified candidates. I'm glad that we took time for public comment because I think it's so important. But again, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
So before we vote, my discussion item is that Zone 2 Zone 2 will be till the next election, right? The appointment is till the next election.
End of the term.
End of the term.
Yeah.
Anyone know when that is?
December 2023.
22.
Thank you.
She is on it.
Same as mine.
Okay, so it's been motion and we have second on the table. So all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, Mr. Valier. It's unanimous. Right, the next item on the agenda is supplemental levy. Do we need to talk about this anymore? Go ahead, Dr. Russell.
Chair Kirkman and trustees, just there's not a whole lot to say other than what everyone has said already. Just a huge thank you to our community. Thank you to the team effort that it takes from the board level, from members in our community, for our staff, for our parents. I think anyone who listened to information, shared information, or got to the polls to vote, we really appreciate that. So it does help us a great deal.
Absolutely. Okay, next item on the agenda is finance update. So Mr. Dewey sneak in the back door.
Generally, I'm pretty loud, so. All right, I really don't have much to say right now. Things are good. We're still, legislators are going through and making decisions daily. We hope that they'll get done sooner than they did last year. But at this point in time, I have nothing real crazy to say. I know we're not in a bad position.
Sure. So. All right. Well, we may have some questions regarding, well, we'll ask them when we need to. Any questions for Mr. Dewey?
No.
All right.
That was easy.
All right, thank you. Thank you. And the next item is superintendent's report. Dr. Russell.
Yes, Chair Kirkman and trustees, we have just a couple of things, the superintendent report that I'd like to share with you today. One is the high school graduation rate. The other one is administration professional development update. I'm wondering, Chair Kirkman, if I could just switch that up a little bit, since we do have 3 of our high school principals here and they do have to get up early in the morning for their schools. If we could start with them. And I'm going to have them go ahead first. I'm going to give a real quick introduction while they get going, while Mr. Churs brings up their presentation. So just some backstory. We sent several administrators down to a training in Texas not too long ago, a week or two ago, around Robert Marzano's work. Dr. Marzano is an educational researcher. It's something that this district has used since around 2003. He has done a great deal of research about what does effectiveness look like in schools, and how can school systems be effective and ensure that they monitor their effectiveness. And so these fine gentlemen here, which we have Corey Wolsterham from Columbia High, we have Waylon Yarbrough from Napa High School, and we have Mr. Will Barber from Schenectady are kind enough to be here tonight. So thank you, gentlemen.
We are so excited, honestly, to share with you what's at the heart of what we've been entrusted with, both of us, teaching and learning. We're the high school principals, but we represent all the schools and what it is that our children need, and to sustain that. Highly reliable schools is what we're intending to become. And in short, my slide, the 3 talking points there, it's what they've been doing, what we've been doing, and then what we get to do together in the future. So in a nutshell, that's really what this is all about. Highly reliable schools are under the direction of Robert Marzano, like Dr. Russell said. They've been going for 40 years, tried and true in all the things that they've researched over the years. And they're current or past teachers, leaders, and we would consider them as one of 3 of the most powerful guidance supporters of education in our industry, what they put together and what they provide for us. Us as educators here in the Napa School District, it isn't new. We've been using the stuff that they've been producing for 20 years now. And so this isn't new to us. What is new is they're summarizing all the research over the last many years and putting it into what's called the high reliability schools. And so for us, it's given us kind of a pep in our step, and I think we're all poised to really just go and get after teaching and learning, especially after the last 2 years. What they describe is that those 5 things at the bottom, and they aren't new, those have been around education for many, many years, that we would iterate and reiterate over and over and over as schools to improve in these 5 key areas, instead of being distracted by this opinion or that opinion or this shiny thing or that shiny thing that is being sold to education. So it's sound, it's been proven over years. We've been using it for years now, and we get to work together
It's one of the highlights for us is that this framework, this guide that we're provided by them, it's the right work, but we get to make it right for NAMPA. That's what's really cool. They're giving us the what, and we get to work on the how together. Very exciting for us.
Before, just a very quick question. Standards reference to reporting, is that any relation to standards-based grading, or is that completely separate?
It's a subset of standard reference.
Okay.
Yep.
And we'll dive probably more into this in more detail.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good evening, board members. Dr. Russell and new board member. So as Corey kind of outlined, we're going to take a look at high reliability schools and take the things that we feel like we're doing already in our schools and reach out to our stakeholders, our students, our staff, our patrons, our parents, and get input on some areas that we want to identify some needs in our school, some things that we're doing well. So if we're doing some things well, we want to figure out ways or measures to keep doing those things well. If we're not doing some things well, we get some input from all of our stakeholders on what they think, bring that information to the table, make some decisions at the school level to continue to improve our schools. So it's exciting that it's more of a self-evaluation rather than something brand new. As Corey mentioned, these are things that we're already doing in our schools, and we just want to continue to get better. So my slide talks about how we'll be able to know if we're doing good things in our schools, and gives an example of a subset of those five. Just an example topic: faculty and staff perceive school environment as safe and orderly, something we all want for our schools. Students, parents, and the community perceive the school environment as safe and orderly. So that would be a topic that we would address, one of about 25 to 30 subsets of those 5 areas. We would set goals. Earlier today, I thought I heard former trustee Mr. Fuller talk about goals and setting up ways to measure those and continue to get better. Kind of prompted my thinking as I was going into this slide. And so an example of that would be no incidents occur each quarter in which student safety is compromised. School safety parent surveys pre and post demonstrate a 25% improvement. Those are just examples on some things that we would look at and continue to look at, not put it on the shelf, but continue to look at the things that we're doing well or not doing very well and try to improve. So it's exciting that it's a continual improvement plan over and over. So excited about the work ahead. Thanks.
I'm gonna look at a couple, excuse me. Thank you for the opportunity, guys. Kind of look at a couple of my notes here on my phone. So if I look down, that's what I'm doing. My role in this presentation is to kind of wrap it all together for you. I was lucky enough to teach under this man and to have that man be my dean while I was a teacher at Columbia High School with Trustee Simpson. One of the things that I learned from both of them was that idea of being committed to being excellent. However, education, because it is so difficult and so complex, we've struggled with how do we do that well? And that's what I'm excited about with the framework of high reliability schools. It helps us create a sustainable way of examining what we're doing to determine if it is working or if it is not, and to make those adjustments much quicker than letting a year or two go by and go, holy cow, what have we done wrong? How can we do it better? It's that continual work. The 5 points that Corey talked about at the beginning of his slide of where those things rely on for high reliability schools, those are a framework for us to work within. But again, one of the things I think is very essential for NAMPA to understand, it's not the how we do it. We get to determine the how. We get to determine what works best for NAMPA, what works best for our community, what works best for our patrons, what works best for each of our schools. About a year and a half ago, actually about 2 years ago now, excuse me, Corey and Will and I started meeting together on Friday mornings because I said, I actually called them out, guys, I'm drowning. I'm new back to NAMPA, and I was like, I need help. I need to understand what's going on in your buildings. And every Friday morning we meet and we go through things, and we've started this process. But what this does is it brings clarity to how we can do that in a much more sustainable way. I'll leave you with one last analogy. One of the presenters at the conference that we were at talked a lot about the idea of a flywheel. Once you get that moving, the flywheel does its own thing to keep that system working and going. And coming out of COVID, I'm really excited to have the idea and the ability to start that flywheel moving for NAMPA again. Not just NAMPA High, but NAMPA School District. And for us to be able to look at what are we doing well, how can we adjust it, and we can keep building and making great schools for our students every day. Thank you. If there are any questions, we'd be willing to answer anything. Dr. Russell, anything you want for us?
No, thank you, Mr. Yarborough. Trustees, just open up if there's any questions. This was just a high level kind of initial introduction. And as we talk about goals and achievement, but I am excited to start talking about goals and learning. This may give us an opportunity to just talk through that, and we'll have many opportunities to go through it. I'd like to work with our board clerk about setting up some work sessions for us to go a little bit more in depth and to learn a little bit more. But thank you for these gentlemen for going and learning. And as Mr. Wolstenholme shared with me in his way back, he said it just felt so good to focus on learning and not have to focus on operations or COVID or subs or money or anything else. So I appreciate this, gentlemen. Thank you.
I just want to say that it is an honor that the three of you are principals within our district. I have gotten the opportunity to spend time with each of you, and I am in awe of all that you do.
Yeah, much appreciated. I do appreciate the comment about the flywheel. You don't have to stand for this. It's just me rambling on personally. Dr. Russell and I have had some conversations about now that COVID is over and where do we go from here? And it almost feels like the springboard is retracted and ready to just let go. That's really how I kind of feel. And so we're on the same page. We really are as a district. And I think the board is on that same page, is that we're ready to spring forward. Spring forward. Just that wasn't even planned either. So. All right. Okay. Well, thank you so much, and really look forward to seeing you tomorrow, Mr. Yarborough. I haven't forgot.
Yep. It's 9:30.
9:30. If I'm late, since this is a public record, it's going to be Dr. Russell's fault.
Fair enough.
I just want to make sure that.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much. All right. Next item on the agenda is. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Are we still on the high?
Oh,
Yes, yeah.
I'm just moving right along. I'm
Yep,
sorry.
you're perfectly fine.
I'm cannonballing right over everything. So please.
Chair Kirkman, our next item has to deal with our high school graduation rate. And so I'm here, have Anita Christensen, our Director of Assessment, to share with us a little bit about not only where our data is, but just to understand the complexity of truly what graduation rate looks like. It has changed a great deal in the state of Idaho the last several years. I was very, very proud of our work prior to the pandemic. The pandemic has hurt us in graduation, and I think Ms. Christensen will share on that and just give you a little bit more knowledge tonight and allow you to ask some questions if you have any.
Good evening. Thank you so much for your time. The graduation rate, when I realized as I was presenting the data, get the data ready for you, I thought you might need a little more information on how it is calculated and also the impact we're going to see for a few more years over that whole 2-year COVID stretch that we face. So that's a little bit about why this is here today. A number of years ago, the state moved to a 4-year adjusted cohort graduation rate. It used to just be, we calculated graduation rate by the number of seniors who started their year and then graduated at the end of it. It was a lot easier to calculate back then. Now we have this 4-year rate. How this is calculated is, well, we do try to exclude kids who transfer out or leave for a GED program. They actually count as non-graduates. How they calculate this is the number of students who earned a high school diploma, and we're talking about the graduates from 2021, that's the cohort we're looking at, earned that diploma by the end of summer 2021. They had to meet those NSD requirements and the state requirements, divided by the number of students who entered all the way back in grade 9 for the first time in the fall of 2017, plus any student who transferred in over those next 4 years as a freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. And then we could then subtract any students who transferred out, immigrated, or died during those same 4 years in those cohorts, as long as we have acceptable documentation. Now, I say that to you, this is how the state likes to describe it to you, and many people look at me and they've glossed over and lost anything that I had to say. So I wanted to give you a really simple example to make this a little more understandable. So on the next slide, we're going to pretend we have a really tiny class, okay, just for easy mathematical sake. We go all the way back to that fall 2017 through spring 2018, and that's their freshman year, right? That's the first year of the cohort. We start with 10 freshmen. Fantastic. During that freshman year, 2 of those students move out. 1 student we received the appropriate documentation for, so we can actually exit him from our cohort, but the other one, The school never sent a records request, didn't do enrollment verification. We just know the kid moved to the city in Oregon. That doesn't mean we didn't call 18 schools and try everything we could, but we did not get the document we needed. At the same time, we had 2 kids move in their freshman year. So now while we only have 10 kids, we still have 11 kids counting in that cohort because we weren't able to remove that one out-of-state kid. So we go into the fall year. This is now their sophomore year. We have 10 kids show up, right? The same 10 kids. 1 student moves to Burley and enrolls and attends Burley High School. 1 student leaves out of state, and 1 student enrolls at Bishop Kelly. You may be wondering why this all becomes so important. The Burley student is a public school student who continued in the state of Idaho, and we have a statewide data system that actually removes him from our cohort. Done. We don't even have to submit anything. The student who lives out of state, we weren't able to get that documentation once again, no matter how many things we sent. But we did get documentation from Bishop Kelly because it's a private school. It is not a part of our state information center, so we have to get documentation. At the same time we lost those 3 kids, we had 3 students move in. So again, we still only have 10 kids, but now we have 12 kids in the cohort because we never got that data to remove those 2. This is just their first 2 years. Let's go on to their junior year. We still have 10 kids. 2 students leave out of state again. We got documentation for 1, not the other. 2 students move into school as juniors. So we have 13 kids in the cohort, but really just 10 kids start our senior year, okay? We have 1 student who moves out to Potlatch their senior year. And so that one takes care of it with our state system. And 1 student leaves for a GED program. That student counts as a non-graduate because while they may go complete a GED program, Idaho won't let us count them. So out of state, receive documentation for our out-of-state kid. This is good, we got that. We have 3 students move in. So what happens is we finish the year, that spring and summer, and we have 10 kids who graduate, right? So we have 14 kids in the cohort. So if Peter will go to the next slide, using that formula I told you on the first page, we took those 10 graduates, those 10 from our freshman class, plus the 10 kids who moved in over those 4 years, minus the 6 we could supply documentation for. And I promise you we use all the right parentheses, Mandy, but the 3 students we couldn't get documentation for and a student who left for GED, that's 10 out of 14. So our grad rate would be 71.43%. So you can see that on this really small scale school, how much 1 kid can start to impact over that time when you're trying to track hundreds of kids. So that's how the 4-year cohort rate is calculated in just my small example. Before we jump into this, do you see how the last 2 years are going to impact a number of years when it's a 4-year model because it carries through all those school years? Questions on how it's calculated?
No, I understand how it's calculated. I'm just thinking, how much additional work is this for?
Chair Kirkman, it is a huge amount of work. Ms. Christensen literally is on the phone towards our deadline, calling high schools all around the country, trying to track down students. And so that's what's so difficult about this. Our graduation rate, while it reflects something that I would like to see higher, we have so little control sometimes about students who do come in or come out, and yet it counts against us. So I'll turn it over.
And we have amazing registrars. They do a ton of that work, but you have to be great at it every single moment a kid leaves for any reason to get all that information over at any time in high school.
What if they were to end up in the criminal justice system and because they have the Robert Jan school that is accredited, does that count or are they gone?
If they actually participate in a high school bearing degree. So a number of our kids may go over here in Canyon County and then they're not enrolled in a degree bearing program, so they count as non-graduates. Yeah. Homeschool students, if a parent chooses to homeschool their kids, we have to have a letter signed by the parent promising us that they're going to homeschool their kids so we can submit that documentation. Yeah. There's a bunch of others, but you got the big picture of the graduate. So now that we know how it's calculated, I think it helps you understand as we look at the data over those 4 years. And as Dr. Russell mentioned, we had amazing grad rate, outperforming the state pre-COVID. It's still a celebration of mine. And we're actually going to look at the other beautiful document in there, of course. Thank you. We're going to stick big picture. You can go into the weeds all you want, but for tonight, we're going to stick big picture. you can see that our overall graduation rate, and if it helps you kind of think of those numbers in my example, we had 822 graduates with 1,065 students in our cohort. So that's where those numbers and pieces come from. We did see a drop of 2.7% in our graduation rate from 2020 to 2021. We also saw that our Hispanic and Latino rate dropped. Our white group did actually see a 0.1% increase, so there is that positive piece. But we did see that drop down to 54.5 in LEP and 69% economically disadvantaged. It is the first time in a very long time where we have been below the state in each of those subgroup indicators. So that kind of helps give you perspective. This picture, again, if you look at the first half of them, we really did have some celebrations. We have often outperformed the state on LEP and economically disadvantaged. We just didn't do that this last year. And we really have seen that decline and that impact of our kids in those areas. And we did see a larger drop from 2020 to 2021 than the state did. The one thing that we do have a slight positive to still focus in on, we usually look at the gap performance. So our economically disadvantaged kids, where we have a gap of 8.2%, which means when we compare our overall students to our economically disadvantaged, they're down 8.2. The state is still up at a 10% gap, so at least our gap is smaller than the state, but hopefully we'll be able to get back where our kids are performing higher than the rest of the state in those areas. There's not a lot to celebrate in here, but again, if you wanted to kind of see, we really did see that greatest decrease in our LEP over that this little time frame here since COVID impact, and then also that dip in our economically disadvantaged. As we look at that information, again, on the last slide, we've had some years where we outperformed the state and it was fantastic. If you look at 18-19, it's a great year to celebrate. 17-18, we really did some times where we outperformed in a number of areas, and hopefully we'll be able to get back in that direction. It's just going to take a while because those 2 COVID years really seem to have impacted our kids more than the state, and it might take us a little while to get back out of that area. What questions do you have about graduation rate on the big picture?
Just want to comment, you had mentioned and I know what you were saying, and this is that there's not a whole lot to celebrate here because of some of those numbers, but again, this is where I kind of flipped that around. There's a whole lot to celebrate here because we have 77-80% of our kids that have graduated, and that's a huge success. It really is. Celebrate the 15% that are graduating. I mean, that really is. We tend to focus on getting these numbers higher, and the ones that aren't getting to that point, we focus on that. But let's not forget those that are making it work and those that are doing well and successful and they're graduating too. So I just wanted to throw that out.
I just wondered if, as in hearing, it stirred this question of, did we have more of that like loss of the tracking of folks because of COVID? So I worry about, moving forward in the next few years that those cohorts may be impacted more, just because to me, it seems like with COVID, we may have not known where kids were going and what was happening, and maybe a harder struggle to find them.
Yeah, we did have a larger number, just as someone who has looked at every single kid who has graduated and not graduated over the last 8 years. I've spent way too much time looking at this, but we had a larger number of unknown than I've seen before. Usually we'll have, some coded as dropout, like known dropout, or kids transferred out of state. This one was everything from transfer out of state, but a larger number of unknown. They stopped coming and we couldn't track them down.
Chair Kirkman and trustees, we have some theories about what that could be. The pandemic, obviously, particularly when you look at our LEP, limited English proficient students, the need to work, the need to watch care over other students, younger siblings, all of those things came into play, particularly if folks had ill family members or whatnot. We are actually going to run through a list right now. I'm trying to track students down, make phone calls, do home visits. Our team's going to start preparing for that, so we can start trying to track and find those. Hopefully get them back into school or other programs that will help them. So it is a huge amount of work in progress. I wish our high school folks were still here. They would share with you the work that they do. But as we talk about setting goals in the future and start looking at those things, I think we'll want to consider our As Ms. Christensen had mentioned, very proud of our work above the state 2 years ago, the highest, and we kept climbing. And so we know we can get back up there. It might take us a little while, but I think we have the ability to do the things we need to get our kids there.
Yeah, and especially with our college and career advisors, they do some great work to really track down kids who just stop and disappear from our campuses.
All of my questions were answered, but I wanted to say thank you for such a thorough presentation. I just greatly appreciate the breakdown and all the included information.
Yeah, your examples were great.
Thank you.
I don't want to add any more work, but I wondered if in goal setting and future planning, if looking at, yes, I know this is how we have to report graduation rate to the state, but looking at this and looking at the, like, here's how many we lost in the cohort, and like, just really looking at, here's the kids who we have and here's the impact. As we're setting goals, to me is far more important than how successful were we to like track kids like UPS packages and know exactly where they are, right? I mean, I don't know, I don't want it to be, I get that it's needed because we have to report to the state, and I really truly don't want to add more to your plate or to anyone's plate, but if that's something that the numbers are there and maybe it's a quick subtraction, like, I can even help do that, but
it's just squishy. It just is squishy because remember, we have what we coded the kid at the time they left us, right? So if it's unknown, we put unknown, but there are we will spend time researching and social media stalk some of our kids who have left our campuses to see if we can find that they went to a private school out of state or something where we can request those things. And so sometimes we find that they've continued, but we have to get that school willing to share the information with us so we can submit it. And so it gets squishy. That's why we don't usually report out on those kids. Like even the 33 kids in LEP who didn't graduate, well, we know exactly who they are. What the reasons they have that we've coded at the time they left us is not necessarily what we found after we did all the research on why and where they went. Does that make sense?
Gotcha. Okay.
So it can just be, as long as you're okay with squishy data. You know, I don't like to do that, but
well, and what I think I'm saying is like, we know they're not here in our schools, but we also know they're being counted against us because we don't know where they are. Is what I'm really saying. So I don't know that that's necessarily squishy, right?
Oh, I could always tell you how many non-graduates we had. It's just the classification they fall into.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I don't need to dig into that. I mean, I know in my own classroom through COVID, we saw a lot of my students started working full time and were helping provide for their families. And so they didn't come back to school. They stayed working.
I'd just like to add on to what Trustee Simpson said. I love the idea of getting that as well, just because I really hate looking at 2020, right? I really hate looking at those years because we had a pandemic. So when we look at some of that information, things changed for reasons that may never happen again in our lifetime. So I love the idea of that more squishy. That's also my new favorite thing is squishy data. It's my new favorite thing anybody said. But I agree with that. And I think just so we have a clearer picture going forward, because, well, you know, we've got 4 years that we're going to be together. And I just like that idea of being able to understand too. So I love that, just the picture, the good picture. Thank you.
Chair Kirkman, trustees, if I could just, one other thing I've been thinking about too, and we'll have time to talk through this again, is thinking about the prerequisites that lead to graduation and how can we set hard goals around some of those things. For example, like F reports in 9th grade. You know, many students who get behind in 9th grade fall behind, and it's harder for us to keep them track. So how can we build stuff in our system and keep track of some of the prerequisites that will lead to a higher graduation rate, as it is difficult to track it and follow the UPS model is not easy. So what I'd like us to maybe is reflect on our system about some of those areas that we can definitely track and make sure that we're doing certain things. So just to think about that as we head down the road.
Right. All I can picture now is barcodes on every one of our students. Just scan them when they're moving.
I know, don't worry. People are going to be like, she called kids UPS packages.
So,
That's not what I said.
very good. Any other comments? Thank you so much for the information.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good luck on all that heavy lift that you have to do with all that data.
Thank you again.
Dr. Russell, is that anything else before I jump into the next?
That is all.
Okay, want to make sure, thank you. So the next item on the agenda, which I think these will go pretty quickly, is we just have some policy reviews, second readings, and we just need some motions and seconds and moving on.
I move to approve policy 7408 for second reading and retire policy 8005.
I second.
And motion and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Discussion. Okay. 4B. Agenda item 4B.
And this was first read, right? No, this is second
Yeah, all
still,
these are
right?
second, yeah.
All of them are second. Sorry, thank you. I move that we approve policy 1150 for second read.
I second.
It's been motion and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, and the next one.
I move that we approve policy 1300 for second read.
Second.
There's been motion and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, those three items have passed. The next item is possible agenda items. I think in out of respect for time, is there anything that trustees need to bring up now that we may want to put on future agenda items, or do we just have that discussion?
I feel like we added a lot
There we
tonight.
go. Okay. I'm
I
glad
have
you
to
said
keep a
that.
list and I'll.
You've been
include that
keeping a
in
list?
this,
All
yeah.
right, very good. The next item is executive session, but I think that we no longer need to move into executive session. So we don't need to move into executive session. Or do we?
I believe it was.
It was received,
Okay,
so we're good.
okay.
So that item's been resolved, so we don't need to move into executive session.
Do we need to motion?
Nope. And
I think you can adjourn.
we can, because that takes care of item number 8.
I move we adjourn.
I second.
Thank you,
Gavel
Trustee
up.
Simpson. We are adjourned at 9:53.